Hello there, internet denizens and misfits. Welcome back to the reading room for another debate dissection, where we are taking apart and doing an autopsy on some of the latest and greatest debates to see what went right, what went wrong, and the cause of death. So welcome back if you're here returning. Welcome for the first time if you're just interested in debate and looking to take it apart. I am joined by my lovely co-host, Better Than Ember. Ember, how are you? Are you well today? Now, Ember is in transit, so please do bear with us. It might be the first half hour. So, yeah, cool. We've got a mobile Ember, which is just awesome. So, yeah, good to see Barnaby beheaded. Always a pleasure. And left-handed Jedi, always a pleasure to see you all. Today, we've got a debate that is not picking on the Christians as Ember and I have kind of been doing lately, but rather the Muslims. And this was from about 4 years ago at the Corpus Christi College, Oxford. Corpus Christi, I believe, is a sort of semi-religious name, though, which is like Christian name, which is kind of an odd one. But
yeah, Body of Christ, if I recall.
Right. This is a bit of a weird one, to be honest with you. So first off, Alex posted about this, how, and I did see this when I first watched this debate a while ago, how the person putting on the debate, who is the guy on the sitting down on the far right of this panel, he sort of did a few dodgy things in the upload kind of thing. So I might go through them as we go on, but it's kind of interesting that it kind of was tampered with. So we'll definitely point that out. But yeah. I'm sorry?
A sinister plot.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know the motivation, but it definitely has stuff wrong with it. And I've got the part at the end where he sort of things don't look right. Definitely don't look right. And I think Alex O'Connor, for my money, is one of the best debaters and anti-apologists on the internet or that I've seen. So going from left to right, we have Dr. Colin Brewer, who's a psychiatrist. He actually is an advocate for euthanasia, essentially. I think that's where he sort of, got his entry into it. We've got Alex O'Connor, of course, cosmic skeptic. We have Abdullah Andalusi, who's from the Muslim Debate Initiative. And we have Muhammad Hijab, who is the guy about to speak, right? No, sorry. Muhammad Hijab is the guy that posted it, the guy sitting down. The guy standing is Abdullah Andalusi. So, yeah, it was a very interesting debate. Do you have anything to cover before we get started?
Doing a quick review of this before we got the show started. I was watching it while I was making food for the week. Alex is kind of in one of those intermediate spaces as his beliefs shifted from one paradigm to another. And that comes up a bit in this debate. He gets accused of things he used to believe. And we've seen from more recent that his beliefs have continued to progress.
You're kind of breaking up a bit. I didn't catch that last part.
From more continue to progress over time, and he's kind of in the middle here.
Okay, well, I guess we should get it started and yeah, go through it. So just give me 1 sec.
Merciful. I'd like to thank the Oxford Forum and my fellow panelists for facilitating this debate.
And just is the sound coming through okay for everybody? I've had some problems with sort of StreamYard doing sound recently, so I just want to check that it is coming through okay. I can boost it if we need, so do give me some feedback if you are in the chat and listening. More than happy to adjust and try out the other stuff to make the experience better. I know Ember's cutting out. No, no, I'm aware of that beheaded. No, I'm not criticizing Amber at the moment. Like the video, mate. Like focus.
Everyone here for attending. I used to be Christian. My mother was Catholic.
Yeah.
And my father was secular. I went to a Church of England school and learned the basics of Christian belief. However, with there being so many belief systems, I asked myself a question. How did I know I was born into the correct one? Would I have been something different if I was born and raised elsewhere? I then studied every belief, claim, or worldview I could find.
Yeah, and that's an interesting question. Would you have believed something different if you were born elsewhere? Absolutely, you would. Especially with the sort of like we don't get people who are sort of born in the Middle East just believing in Buddhism when they have Muslim parents. You know, like we don't get that. We don't get, like, people have to be exposed to something before they believe it. So in the time before internet and even sort of the global community, people would believe whatever their parents believe because that's all that they were introduced to. So, you know, of course, somebody who's born to evangelical parents in the deep south are going to believe in evangelical. You know, they're not going to be Muslim out of the gate. They might believe that later on after sort of being convinced, but they have to be exposed to it to believe it.
Which in and of itself is a bit of a problem for religions. If any of them were true, you shouldn't have to be exposed to it before you know it's true.
Well, yeah, you would think so. You would think that it would sort of be in, you know, people in different areas would come to the same conclusions. Like with science, for instance, you know, people in different areas came to the same conclusions about, say, germ theory of disease or, you know, gravitational theory or whatever. You know, we all came to the same conclusion. It's kind of weird that such disparate ideas would crop up like in different areas, but it's more the idea that we all have an inherent knowledge of God kind of thing. We obviously don't. A baby is always, you know, born without any knowledge of a God. They have to be taught these things. Yeah.
To discover the ultimate explanation for all things. In doing so, I found that many explanations couldn't account for many things.
Sorry.
I said, oh no, because he immediately ran off down into a fallacy. He's assuming his conclusion that there has to be a single ultimate cause for all things.
Yeah. Why does there have to be a single cause? I don't. Yeah.
Like observe or prove themselves false or fell apart due to their own self-contradictions or contradictions between what they say and reality. For example, I encountered Trinitarian Christianity, which argues that God is both one and three, and that the infinite, immortal God is also...
Oh, and that's a point. I mean, I labeled this as Islam versus atheist. Oh, I think I missed off updating the title. The actual thing, it was billed as Islam versus atheist. The actual proposition was, does Islam, or the question was, does Islam explain reality better than atheism? So it's kind of odd that he's going to a Trinitarian God, I suppose, which is kind of weird, my money, because it's not really anything to do with whether Islam explains. So Islamic people, Islamic people don't, they like to do this a lot, compare themselves with Christianity in atheist debates, and I don't understand why. Nadir's famous for doing this. Like, he'll be debating a thing on whether the Quran is scientific, and he'll just be saying, well, it's more scientific than the Bible. And it's like, well, that's debatable for a start, but it's not the debate we're in. So it's kind of odd. I don't know why. And a lot of, I've been noticing this, that that we will sort of talk about it, and you know, they'll be going, oh, but Christianity isn't true, and it's like, well, I didn't think it was. Like, why would that be a point in its favor? And plus, both Christianity and Islam has the same roots. They both believe that the Old Testament is true. So I don't know why that's supposed to be a point in its favor. It's like saying, well, sorry, go ahead.
It's a very curious thing, and it does come up later. So perhaps we'll talk more about it then when it does. But
yeah,
I think maybe he's just so used to debating with Christians that he has to throw in that dig against Christians.
Well, yeah, it sure.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
I'm speculating, but it's conjecture, Your Honor.
Well, so what I suspect, and I don't know this for sure. I will qualify that I don't know this for sure, but I suspect that a lot of due to the rise of the nuns or no religion, sort of people moving from religion to no religion, Islam is definitely getting bigger, but it's more taking from other religions rather than, Christianity is the one that's really suffering, and Islam is sort of, a lot of people are moving from Christianity to Islam. So I think he's maybe sort of, going where the money is, essentially.
Yeah, yeah. He's an apologist first and foremost, so yeah, that makes sense.
So a finite mortal man. I encountered polytheists who argued that there are many gods, some eternal, some who popped out of nothing, who are all infinite but have created and finite human or animal forms, suffer ignorance, tiredness, and even injury. Some Pacific island religions consider volcanoes who created their island and whose sediments make the ground highly fertile for cultivation to be also eternal and divine. I've also...
he's basically pointing to the diversity of religious beliefs as to a reason why his one is true. I don't understand that tactic.
I get the impression that he's trying to say there's many, many options. Here's why I'm ruling out all these others. I guess ostensibly, therefore, leaving just Islam, but he's got to still make that case.
Right.
Found that many atheistic positions are not any more special or more coherent than these. For example, many materialistic world...
Okay, so yeah, I mean, that's highly debatable. Obviously, that's the reason why we're here, but coherent than a volcano god? I don't think atheism is a position on anything. It's a refutation of a proposition that God created, or there is a God. You basically, if you don't believe that, you're an atheist. I don't know why
I want to push back on him a little bit, just assuming that, the Polynesian religions or any religion with that kind of naturism thing, the deification of natural features.
Mm-hmm.
On the plus side, the fucking volcano actually exists. So it's got one up on Allah right there,
Right. Yeah.
Views argue that the universe which we see, which is finite, limited, and changing, is also somehow infinite and eternal at the same time. You just can't see it.
Well, I don't know about infinite and eternal. I think that we're sort of acknowledging that we don't know whether it is, in fact, eternal. There's also another word I like to use instead, which is at a certain point, it may be atemporal. Sort of, if the universe existed before time, then it wouldn't have time acting on it. But eternal sort of means, and it sort of relates to the A theory of time, where time is linear and it's just all in a straight line. It's all just one thing after another. I don't know, but no one's claiming that's the case. It may be. It very well may be. We don't know enough about it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why he's sort of saying, hey, you're claiming this when we're not claiming that. We're claiming it could be.
It's a rhetorical tactic. He's deliberately conflating multiple different perspectives in a reductive form to try to create a contradiction where there isn't necessarily one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Other atheist positions argue that the universe ultimately popped out of nothing, albeit with precisely measured amounts of energy, but no cause to determine that measure. Of course, there are also atheistic world.
No cause to determine that measure.
Straw man.
No. Yeah, I don't know about. We're saying there may very well be a cause, and it may very well be measurable. The fact that we don't know how to measure it or how to find, past what Planck time, one Planck epoch after the presumed origin point, it doesn't, we're not saying that we know that it's unmeasurable, so that is a bit of a straw man of the position.
Views like types of Buddhism, which goes to show that atheism doesn't preclude spirituality, just God.
That is true. I agree with. Yeah, totally agree with him on that.
It's definitional. It's axiomatic.
Yeah. You could believe that a spiritual force of nature exists that magicked the universe into existence. You'd still be an atheist, as long as it isn't a god.
Oh,
that's
for
fine.
sure. My oldest is into tarot and spirits and all that fun stuff, and but no God.
Breaking up
like
again.
Definitionally, curses.
When I encountered Islam, I found something different. That Islam describes God as a being of infinite or inexhaustible power and who possesses intentionality or will. He has no human or animal attributes, forms, natures, or appetites. Islam teaches that God is genderless, does not experience tiredness or ignorance, and exists without peer. Surah Ikhlas of the Quran makes clear, Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim, Qul huwa Allahu ahad. Say God is one, Allahu Samad. The self-sufficient, Lam yalid wa lam yulad. He does not reproduce, nor was he reproduced. Wa lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. There is nothing like him, which means he is without partner. Because if there were other infinite gods, they would all limit each other and all would not be infinite or gods at all. This is the Islamic concept of God, a pure indivisible oneness, a cause and initiator for all things, a divine unity behind the multitude of created things.
Okay, well, I mean, that's a very, very bold claim. That's a very bold claim. Yeah, it's you can't just say, well, it's all one thing that is a multitude of these attributes, and then sort of just leave it at that. I don't know why you would say that. Looks like we've had Ember sort of accidentally drop out. So we're having connection problems, and I really do apologize. It should only be about for half an hour or so. I really do apologize. It's sort of just oh, and we're back.
Aye.
There you go, Ember. So you are back on, Ember. Sorry
Hooray.
that that's happening. Again, I apologize. It's just a few more minutes. Thank you so much for bearing with me. I really thank you. And I'll start again.
And it is the only explanation that is without contradictions and circular reasoning and does not need to appeal to any mystery to hide faults it simply doesn't have. Islam's message to mankind is to avoid the error of mixing the infinite and the finite together and creating false idols by attributing to limited and finite things the attributes that belong only to the creator and vice versa. Instead, Islam asks mankind to recognize the infinite alone as the ultimate creator of all things, who is separate from his creation and not like it. Is this a God peculiar to Islam? No. Anyone on earth today or in history who worships an infinite, unlimited creator who willed all things into existence and does not resemble any finite things or creatures worships the same God we do, whatever religion they call themselves. Islam teaches that it is not something new, but merely a reiteration of the same message that has been repeatedly sent down to mankind throughout different times and places, producing commonalities in many religions throughout history. Now to the title of the debate, Islam explains reality better than atheism. Some might say, well, atheism doesn't seek to explain anything. It's only a lack of belief of God or a rejection thereof. But atheism's denial of the existence of God carries the minimum corollary, that reality is completely explainable without God. And they'd be wrong in my estimation.
Reality is completely explainable without God. Well, if God, and that's a big if God is the explanation, then it's not explainable without God. If God isn't the explanation, then it is totally explainable without God. It depends what the explanation for reality is. Like, you're just assuming that God is the explanation here, so you have to have it. I don't understand this.
Wouldn't a perfect God create a universe that was internally consistent, therefore explainable?
Depends on the God. If you had a God that just wanted to create absolute nonsense and confusion everywhere, then he might actively try to, show that it's not him and create a lot of confusion. That the problem comes for Christians in particular, where they say God is not the author of confusion, because it certainly seems like we're having a lot of trouble finding the God that's not causing all of this confusion, apparently. But
much like his opening.
Right, and it really depends on the God, or if it's a deistic God, for instance, not a theistic one, a deistic one. A God may just start everything in motion and not care, whether we find out what caused it or not. So that's all dependent on an Islamic God that wants people to follow the teachings of his prophet. You would think that he would make it blatantly obvious for everybody, right? So yeah, but he's sort of saying, hey, he's relating it to any gods kind of thing.
There are 4 aspects of reality that only Islam's concept of God can ultimately and soundly explain. Well,
really? Only Islam's God can explain 4 aspects? This is going to be good. This is going to be really.
Did he not just say that any religion that believes there's an infinite, perfect, yada yada, believes in the same thing regardless of what they call themselves? And now he's saying all the rest of them are garbage, only Islam is true. Okay.
Right. It's a contradiction. It's sort of saying, hey, everybody actually believes in, maybe he's saying everybody actually believes in the Islamic God kind of thing.
Atheism cannot do so without falling into self-contradiction, and these aspects are change, matter, finitude, and specificity.
Change, matter, finitude, and specificity.
Those are some bold claims.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what is going on.
Atheism rejects the only sound explanation for change. If this moment depended on an infinite number of previous moments and movements, we'd never exist or get here.
So this is infinite regress, of course.
Yay, my favorite.
Yeah. So it's okay. Infinite regress. There's not really a problem with infinite regress. There's certain things that infinite regress doesn't address, and I find that more God is special pleading for infinite regress, because if you're saying everything has to have a cause, well, what causes God?
Alex touches on that later. He does it quite eloquently. I just,
if I were to say that,
it baffles me. I've mentioned a few times before that when Plato used the argument to absurdity, he would take an argument and blow it up really, really big to show a tiny flaw in it is really, really obvious. And it just blows my mind that Abdullah, is it this presenter? Or is this one Muhammad?
This is Muhammad, I believe.
Okay.
Muhammad is sorry, no, you were right. This is Abdullah. Sorry. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. They're both fairly well versed in philosophers, and it blows my mind that they're not seeing this. That there's a really big problem with making this aside from the special pleading, that nothing in the universe has one single cause. And when you try to use a single explanation to alleviate the problem of infinite regress, then you end up with the same problem. It doesn't follow. You haven't demonstrated that that is the only possible solution to infinite regress. It's just being assumed.
Right. And sort of this idea that that one cause is the cause of it all. I don't know how, like, so things in nature generally their causes are complex and sort of, so what causes a tree to be cut down kind of thing, for instance. If we go, what caused that? Was it the person getting up in the morning and deciding to do it? Was them actually swinging the axe the cause? What was the cause? We can always break it down into smaller and smaller things. It was the impact of the axe. So this sort of thing of cause is nebulous. It seems like there's less of a linear cause to effect as there is changes of state that is impacted by a multitude of different sort of causal relations with one another. I get the idea of infinite regress, but it doesn't address whether anything was eternal or atemporal to start off with. It doesn't address things like cyclic time, right? Where time basically it leads into itself, right? So the cause is the effect and the effect is the cause, a cyclical version of time. It doesn't address, and that's not to say that I believe in any of these things, that time is cyclical or that, the universe created itself or any of these things. But how do you address that? Because you're saying there is no other explanation for the problem of infinite regress than God. And it's like, well, how did you eliminate all of these other possibilities, like something eternal that is not God? Like, how did you rule that out?
Yeah, or like we see in nature, many things coming together to create a cumulative effect that we perceive as one thing. The universe isn't one thing. It's a composition fallacy. The universe is all the matter, all the energy, all the photons, all the moments in time, all the geographical coordinates. It's all things, but it's not one thing that we just throw it all in the basket of existence. It's all those things individually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the universe may be one thing. I came across sort of a quantum monism idea that we think of things as grouped together smaller things as a foundation, for instance, like everything's made up of atoms. It's a smaller foundation, which is made up of quarks, which is a smaller foundation, that kind of thing. And that very well may be true. There was a idea of quantum monism that everything is quantum entangled on a level that we can't perceive. That means that everything is just one thing, and we're just getting parts of that one thing, that the foundation is actually everything. And I don't know that's true, but I can't prove it false. Now, I don't believe it because I can't prove it true, but the whole point is, how did you discount that? Like, how do you discount any of this instead of saying, well, I don't know? Like, it's kind of, your entire argument hinges on none of the other possibilities being true. How did you discount them? And that's the problem with the deductive argument. The problem with a deductive argument is you've got to eliminate all other possibilities, which they certainly have not done. All they're doing is just claiming that theirs is the only possibility without, explaining how they deduced that. Should we go into a quick explanation of deduction versus induction and abduction?
Sure. That actually does come up later, so it may be handy to do a quick recap.
Yeah. So basically, deduction is where you take a set amount of possibilities and eliminate them until one remains. So you basically have 10 people and you eliminate them logically until one person remains, that has to be the answer, right? Induction is where you take repeated instances of something happened and then it guides you towards a certain thing. Like, for instance, if you have all of these people standing around and one person has, you know, they're accused of a murder, one person has blood on their coat, one person has, you know, was in the area at the time, you know, someone saw that person, kind of thing. That's taking evidence pointing towards one person rather than deducting the others to leave the remaining. So if you will notice, an abduction is sort of going on probability. What is the most probable explanation based upon certain things? So abduction's a bit different. It's based on probability. It doesn't give you any kind of real certainty, but rather a general probability, like a parsimonious explanation. Yeah, so that's sort of the difference between induction, which is sort of repeated events leading you to a conclusion, and deduction, where it's sort of taking away possibilities until you're left with the only one left. The problem with deduction is that you have to eliminate everything, you know, like sort of everything except the possibility. Now, deduction's great where you only have, you know, very few possibilities. Like, for instance, if it's either God or not God, and if you can eliminate not God, it becomes very easy to say, hey, it is a God. But how do you eliminate not God? That seems difficult, to say the least. Oh, so, sorry, Barnaby, considering there's billions of options than not God, literally probably infinite options than not God. Hello, Barnaby, for $2. Forgot to donate. Sorry. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. You're under no obligation, so I appreciate it even more. Thank you so much, Barnaby, friend of the channel and absolute hero. Okay. And good to see you, Isa, Doc. I owe Isa an email. I'm so sorry, Isa. I do owe you an email. Just a tangent for a second. I really was going to organize something with Isa, and I totally... just been busy. I do apologize, mate. Totally my fault. Okay.
My opponents can begin their speech after an infinite amount of time. They would never have the chance to start their speeches, as an infinite amount of time can't end or even begin, if you think about it. Likewise, if I asked a poor student, not poor name in particular, for £1 and he didn't have it, and he asked another who was equally poor, and so on and so on, I'd never get that £1 until the chain of students found at least one student who had £1 to begin the chain of lending and eventually get to me. Now, this is...
Oh, that's yeah. Yeah, okay. You know, I suppose I'm not sure about this analogy. I get what he's saying. He's just pointing out infinite regression. I kind of agree. But, you know, that's assuming that everybody's students. You know, there's no person externally, and I'm not sure why he's using students. Not 100% sure. Thank you so much. Left-handed Jedi gifted 5 readerships. Who are the winners? So Spilka Von Spada, Isa. There you go, Isa. I just mentioned you, and you get a readership. That's what happens on this channel. It's prophecy. Bond, Tiny Pink Penguin, and Speedy Romans. Thank you so much, Left-handed Jenna. You are a champ. So I really appreciate it. Winner, chicken dinner. It's actually crazy how often I mention somebody and they get a readership. It's actually kind of weird, quite frankly. But maybe the algorithm is listening. YouTube algorithm is listening. It's so generous. Thank you.
Known as the infinite regress fallacy, which is the same as asserting a beginning and...
The infinite regress fallacy. I don't think it's a fallacy. Is it a fallacy? I don't think it is.
I actually looked this up earlier. It is...
Sorry, you broke up there. It is what? Sorry?
It is not. It isn't actually a fallacy. It's an argument.
Yeah. I don't think it's a fallacy at all. Like, it's not a logical fallacy, and like it is a compelling argument as to why infinite regress can't be true. It seems to appeal a lot to our intuition about things, but I don't necessarily trust my intuition about everything, because the intuition can often be wrong. So yeah, I don't know.
No beginning at the same time. It is a contradiction and therefore impossible. The existence of change and movement requires a first mover. There's no way around that. And if there is, and if it is the first mover, it means it chose to move things without being moved by anything else.
Okay, so there's so much wrong with this. You've already assumed that first mover is an agent, a person, a thing that has a mind and is choosing things. I've heard this from Will. He's just taken this from William Lane Craig, or maybe he came up with it and it's just very, very similar. But when we say a mover, we don't necessarily mean a person. Like, you have to actually identify and demonstrate that is an actual agent who chose to do that, rather than some kind of atemporal agent which had some other thing act upon it. Okay, sorry. And Ember is home, so I apologize for the sound issues. They are over. We can, our eardrums are okay now. Yay. Oh, I love that outfit. That is very bright and colorful. I love it. Fantastic. You're welcome.
Therefore, it has a will. This is the key characteristic of God.
Therefore, it has a will. I'd like to see you demonstrate that. I really would. I don't know how you demonstrate that it has a will. It seems to just going, well, if it chooses to change, then it has a will. And it's like, well, how's it a choice? I don't know. I honestly don't know.
There's a lot being assumed there.
Whose name is Al-Mubdi, in the initiator in the Quran. 2, atheism rejects the only sound explanation for the ultimate basis behind matter. If matter gets its attributes and characteristics because it is made from something more fundamental than it, let's just say subatomic particles and forces, ultimately quarks and bosons, and these things are made of, let's say, quantum vacuum energy or fluctuations in such thing, or superstrings, one or the other for the sake of argument, what is quantum vacuum energy, or what are superstrings, if they even exist, made of?
What's God made of?
What are marshmallows made of?
Right. and again, like, just because we, it's kind of this idea of, well, are quarks and is quantum foam fundamental? Seems like it, but atoms seemed fundamental as well. So how do we, there's a problem here of how we ever get to fundamental things, but sort of saying, well, God's fundamental, and just leaving it at that. Well, what's it? What? Like, you're not actually explaining it. You're just saying it's fundamental. Like, you're not actually demonstrating that it is in fact fundamental. And yeah, I get it. That's a problem, because it's kind of like the infinity problem. How do we tell when we've reached infinity? How do we tell when we find what's fundamental? As I pointed out, like, there has been papers on quantum monism sort of suggesting that, hey, it might be the entire reality that's fundamental, and we're looking at it in the wrong way. That we're thinking these things are smaller and smaller are fundamental when the whole thing's fundamental. But that doesn't mean it's a thinking agent, and that doesn't mean it's a God. Is that true? I don't know. I'm happy to sit there and go, well, I don't know. I don't know if the entire universe is fundamental. Or reality is fundamental. I don't know that. But you have to eliminate that for, your deductive argument to work.
I find it incredibly arrogant that not just him, but other apologists presume that if there is a divine being, that it must have free will and make choices and think in the same way that we humans do, because he's kind of blaspheming low-key. He's putting himself on the same level as the God he claims to believe in. He's saying
Right.
God isn't actually, he knows more because he's infinite, but he's not smarter than me. He's not more clever than me. I am a godlike being because we think the same way. When in reality, hypothetical reality, if there were such a being, its way of processing information, making decisions, and so forth would be so far beyond human comprehension that to call it thinking, that would be blasphemous.
Yeah, yeah, and it's amazing how often they want to tell you exactly what the God wants and what its aims are and what, all of this thing. So it's not just this whole idea that God exists and is the cause of all of this. They've also, because it is Islam, they've got to make the case that Muhammad was the messenger of Islam and was given all of this information by a God. So it's sort of doubly hard that you have to demonstrate that Muhammad knew what this God wanted and how it thought. So it becomes doubly hard. But yeah, I don't know why I think in God is required for any of this stuff. Origin of the universe, infinite regress problem. Why is a God required? Why not just natural forces that we don't understand? Why doesn't magic fit? Yeah, why doesn't magic fit just as well?
Ooh, I like magic.
I've got my example of sort of origin of the universe was a magic stone called the Blarney Stone.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's just magical, can do anything. It's not controlled by time, but has a force called magic which operates on it. That it's part of. Like that the magic is basically the Blarney Stone. The Blarney Stone is magic. It can do anything. So it can start a universe with no time acting on it at all. So how did you eliminate the Blarney Stone as a possibility? This is why I said I can provide infinite options than God. So you can't just eliminate natural things and say, well, I'm done. There's plenty of options that are not natural and are not gods. Oh, the super chat from my favorite weasel. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Tap. Member for 15 months. This is insane. Yo, what up, chat? Ember Mark, much love. Keep calm and masturbate. I absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. That's what that emoji says if you're hard of reading, which, my old eyes are.
If something else, and that's made of something else, where does it stop? If it has no end, then nothing would exist. It's like saying a branch is held aloft from the ground by an infinitely tall tree, or a pond has no bottom to hold up the water, despite the water being at a specific level.
That doesn't follow.
What? No, that really doesn't follow. And sort of, so if at some point the universe was, I hate to use eternal, but atemporal, your sort of thing just falls down in a heap there. So yeah,
he's crapping on infinities while claiming an infinite being. He's saying there's no infinitely tall tree, but there is an infinitely tall, not a tree that does the same thing the infinite tree would have done. What?
Yeah. And, if you just, it's funny to throw the cyclical time hand grenade in there. It loops back on itself. What now? Oh, well, you have to prove that. No, I don't believe it, but you're saying that your God is the only option, the only possibility. How did you eliminate cyclical time where it feeds back in on itself and the cause is the effect and the effect is the cause? How did you eliminate that? But that's where they throw their hands up and go, oh, that makes no sense. Neither does a God.
That's why we need God.
Yeah, yeah.
The fact that anything exists and continues to exist proves there must be something fundamental that is supporting all these things, that itself isn't made of anything else and has no parts and therefore is self-sustaining. The Quran calls God Ar-Razzaq, the sustainer, Al-Hafidh, the preserver, Al-Samad, the self-sufficient. 3, atheism rejects the only sound explanation for finite things. If something has size, shape, charge, or a specific characteristic, what determined these limitations in the first place?
So this is the laws require a lawgiver argument, that something had to lay down the fundamental properties of the universe. Why is that a god?
The whole concept of something having to sustain all that is.
Yeah.
That isn't part of that, like, we don't see that in reality either. Like, you know, we're not self-sustaining. I mean, you know, our biology works fucking magic, but we still need oxygen, we need water, we need food, we need sunlight to make our vitamin D, and all these outside things. We're not self-sustaining. To say that there's a thing that's sustaining all things, like, no, there isn't a single thing that sustains all things. We haven't detected any such thing. So what is he talking about?
I'm not sure. He seems to think that, I think this is the laws require a lawgiver. So he's pointing to sort of natural laws of the universe and saying, hey, somebody is implementing and maintaining those laws so that, you know, gravity works and, you know, energy
Jesus
isn't
with the little
lost
Jesus particles.
Right, exactly. I except in this case, it's sort of, you know, Muhammad's best friend with Muhammad's best friend particles. I don't, you know, I don't know.
If it were determined by a finite thing outside itself, an efficient cause, going on forever, it's an infinite regress fallacy. If it was determined by...
That's not a fallacy, dude. That's an argument. That's not a fallacy. Though there may be no problem with infinite regress. We don't know. Are there infinite things? Like in reality, we don't know. How do you test infinity?
You measure it.
When do you stop measuring and say, hey, it's infinite? There's the problem. It's not a fallacy, right? That's the thing. Logical fallacies are sort of, but at the end of the day, all claims to knowledge seem to point back to one of the Munchausen trilemma. And I talk about this a lot because we have to admit where all knowledge goes back to one of these certain places that we have to come from. The Munchausen trilemma leads to infinite regress, dogmatic assertion, or circular argument. One of those three, all claims of knowledge goes back to. And you don't get around it by saying, well, God did it then. That's just dogmatic assertion. It doesn't solve your problem because you can't point to what caused that God or how the God came about. And just saying, well, it wasn't caused. That doesn't solve it because that's just, say it with me, dogmatic assertion.
Dogmatic assertion. It's hard to synchronize over StreamYard.
Sorry, no, that's my fault. I said that without actually thinking about it. Wow, I'd say a lot without actually thinking about it. I think it's a problem.
The building blocks inside itself, a material cause going on forever into smaller and smaller blocks, it's another infinite regress fallacy. The only possibility left is that all forms and limited characteristics of all finite things were ultimately created by something that has no finite limitations itself, i.e. something infinite, which has no limits that need determining by something else, and therefore is the ultimate or necessary thing, and it creates all other things. The Quran calls God Al-Khaliq, the creator. 4, atheism rejects the only sound explanation for the specificity of finite things.
Only sound explanation, okay. So what's wrong with the soundness? The finite specificity. So I'm not sure what he means by this. Why things aren't all the same as one another?
Oh, I don't think that's what he means, but that's a good question. Why are things divided? Why are all my atoms distinct atoms instead of one big clump in a primordial singularity, perhaps?
Yeah. I mean, we can sort of say, hey, it things form due to fluctuations in sort of the state of quantum fields, and that formed into certain matter and energy that have different things due to the natural properties of them. But again, he's just sort of saying, well, those natural properties are made by a god, sort of measuring out with a ruler, saying, hey, that's going to be a hydrogen atom, and that one, that's going to be something different. Those two hydrogen atoms, they're going to fuse and create helium kind of thing because God tells them to and wags a finger at them if they don't. I don't know why. It seems to be natural properties of the universe, and you're asking, why do those natural properties occur? We don't know why they occur like that. That's sort of weird.
And we're still working
in the
on
universe, including the magnitude of.
Yeah, we don't know why the properties of the universe are the properties of the universe. You're claiming God. The burden is on you to show why it is a God, not on us to show why it is not a God. Like, we're not claiming it's not a God. We're just saying we don't believe you when you say, I know it is a God. So you've got to demonstrate that because we're rejecting your claim. So this is kind of just shifting the burden of proof, right? It's just sort of saying, hey, you can't account for the specificity of energy and matter. Prove it. Prove it's not a God.
The forces of gravity, strong, weak force, and electromagnetism, and the amount of energy contained in the universe are specific to a certain magnitude, size, quantity, and quality. Considering that the universe could have one quark more than it has, the question is, what determined it would be one way and not another? Perhaps the conditions prior to the universe's emergence, shall we say, led to the conditions we see now.
Yeah, I think that this is sort of an argument towards fine-tuning that, why isn't the universe different than what it is? Could it be different is the question. We don't know. Is it that this is one of many candidate universes or child universes of a larger cosmos, and it just happens to be like this, and we happen to be the kind of intelligence that would arise in a universe such as this? We don't know.
So
could a universe...
This is where we start to get into what the Quran actually says. And shoot, I have too many verses set aside here for in case they come up later. I'll have to give you a specific citation later if I find it. But there's a verse in there where it specifically says Lord Allah is the creator of all universes, which means the Quran explicitly states there is a multiverse. So why is this universe this way? Because Allah created all the universes, and this one happens to be the checkbox on the list that meets these criteria. And of course, if multiverse theory, if the Lincoln ever gets justified in his supposition of multiverse theory, know the apologists are immediately going to go back to that verse and say, look, the Quran predicted the multiverse.
Right. Yeah. I mean, he brought up string theory, and that's largely been debunked. I don't know if multiverse is true. I don't know if, the universe could have been any other way. Fine-tuning kind of points to the, it's impossible. Like, if all variables could be different, then it's so unlikely that the universe came out in a way to be able to sustain life that a god must have tweaked the numbers. The numbers must be fudged. But that's only if it's the same likelihood to be any of those numbers. Like, maybe the gravitational constant, it was only likely to be this one. Maybe there's a 99.9% chance that the universe would come out to be like this one. I don't know. Nobody knows, because we only have one universe, and it has these properties. We cannot investigate other universes to see if they are sustainable for life or not. Would humans come out in that universe? I think it's highly unlikely from what we understand about evolution. If there is a universe with one more quark, I don't know how it would come out, because it seems like life fits to its environment, not the other way round. So I don't know. Maybe we would be humans with an extra arm. I don't know, because I don't have access to that universe to investigate. Although I would like an extra arm. That would be cool.
It would be handy.
Yeah. That's amazing. That's amazing. That is so good. I sorry. I had to do that. That too good, Ember. Too good.
Hell yeah.
This only shifts the burden of explanation further along the chain. What then determined the precise pre-existing conditions before the universe that led to our universe being the way it is? If we invoke an infinite chain of pre-existing conditions to explain our current condition, or the condition of the emergence of the universe, this is yet again another infinite regress fallacy, I'm afraid. The only remaining explanation is that something ultimately chose or determined by its will all things to be the way they are. The Quran calls God al-Musawwir, the shaper. Islam posits that God ultimately created and sustained all things. He is infinite, unlimited, and self-sustaining, and he alone...
Infinite things can't exist except for this infinite thing.
Yep.
His pleading is special, very special. So this is, if you're interested, the fallacy that he's doing is special pleading. He's saying things can't be infinite. They can't last forever. They can't be causeless. They can't have, they have to have these properties, except for God. That's special. Yeah. The best debate thing about special pleading I've been in was that guy Ronnie, where he basically says, well, special pleading doesn't apply to God. That's a special case, which was just beautiful, like just hilarious.
So would that be special pleading, or would it be special pleading?
I think it'd be special pleading.
Okay.
To my money, but you can call it whatever you want. It's just funny to me.
He alone measured out the numbers of things and apportioned.
Oh, he made people so mad too. Not atheists. He made the theists so mad too, because he said that all of the theists are special pleading, and they got so mad at him. It was actually hilarious. And the funnier part was, I threw him a bone and said, well, like at one point he sort of said, oh, well, God is omnipotent, and there's problems with omnipotence. Like, is there a rock that God can create that's too heavy for him to lift? There's some logical contradictions. So I said, well, mostly it gets around by saying maximally powerful, right? Heard William Lane Craig say it. So I say maximally powerful, if you want to use that. And he goes, no, you don't tell me what to say. He's omnipotent. And I'm like, okay, what the hell?
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to help the guy. Boy.
Or what you call natural laws behind all things. It is the Islamic concept of God that not only explains reality better than atheism, but it is the only explanation ultimately that can explain reality that we see, which does not possess self-contradictions, circular logics, or appeals to mystery or blind faith. The argument of atheists, in my experience...
He did 3 of those!
Yeah.
He did circular logic, blind faith, and an appeal to mystery. I mean, he didn't expressly state the appeal to mystery, but he's just asserting God is the explanation.
Mm-hmm.
Well, explain it then. God works in mysterious ways, Yeah.
We can't understand how God works. Well, you know what? You can do that with literally infinite things. The Blarney Stone has magic. Magic works in mysterious ways you can't possibly understand. It's far beyond your comprehension, but it just works. It's exactly the same argument. And you can't argue against it, because if you say, hey, it can't work like that, you can't know how it works. So you can't argue against it. It's a very obvious ploy. As opposed to the sort of atheists who are saying, we don't know how it works. We're not claiming that. But we're claiming that your assertion that God did it does not actually explain it. And we're happy to say we don't know. but there's no reason to believe that God did it, that Blarney Stone did it, that Nile, the non-God creator of creator gods, did it, or anything else was responsible for this.
Are no different to those I've encountered from polytheists, Trinitarians, or volcano worshippers. Atheists just call their God the universe, which essentially is just a bigger volcano.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Yeah, but
the projection. He's just
Right,
saying
well-
it's the universe plus one remove, with no reason why that should be the
Yeah.
case. But also, we don't worship the damn universe.
Correct. I mean, some people do. They're pantheists and they believe that the
Yeah.
universe has a will as a agent being. That's fine. Like, I'm not saying you can't do that. I'm just saying there's no evidence to suggest why that might be the case. Or panpsychists that believe that the universe is a mind, you know, that it is a mind itself with no other distinguishing traits. That's fine. I get that. I don't think it's justified. There's nothing that the universe appears to us to be a mind of, or a mind in and of itself. But I think you have to do some pretty large leaps to get to the universe is a God. Like, your definition of God has to be so loose that it becomes meaningless as a religion anymore. It's kind of like if people go, well, you know, if you say, hey, humans could have been made by aliens from Andromeda, they say, well, then that's God. Well, then that sort of cheapens what a God is, doesn't it? Like, to ants, we're a god. Does that make us a god? Does that make us in some way supernatural? No, of course not. I think that a god has to be something that is sort of have some properties of being able to contravene laws of the universe, like being able to change the very fundamentals of the universe. I think that my definition of a god would have an agent, a necessary agent, that has the power to suspend or contravene laws of nature.
Yeah.
If you're saying the universe, not an agent, and the universe doesn't have the power to suspend any of the laws of nature. In fact, it is beholden to them.
It's kind of required.
Yeah. So I don't know your definition of a god that you're making there. If your definition of God is just the natural reality around us, well, great. I agree then that God exists. Einstein agrees that God exists. Spinoza agrees that God exists, but it's not much of a God. At that point, you're just saying, hey, reality exists. Yeah? Why are you calling it a God?
Yeah.
And
What
claiming that
need
it
have we
wants
for that
things.
hypothesis?
Right. But the problem is also that he's not only claiming that the universe, he's then claiming that the God, the universe, wants things from us. It wants us to observe Ramadan and pray, you know, 4 times and do all of these different extra things. How do you know the universe wants that? So I think he's being a little bit disingenuous here, because he isn't claiming that the universe is God. He's not a pantheist. So I don't think so.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'd also like to extend my gratitude to Dr. Foran for making this happen. I did have some things to say.
Oh, and that reminds me, one of the complaints Alex had was that they demanded that he not alter the doc thingo in any way. They didn't want him to delete any comments on his channel, which a lot of them were fair. A lot of them were fair requests, but as you'll see later on, they kind of don't do the same. And he wasn't allowed to do the full debate. I mean, we're not doing the full debate here for probably mostly for copyright reasons. We want to just address the arguments, and you know, all of the Q&A and stuff I've left out. But the whole point is that they demanded things of him. They deleted comments. They sort of doctored footage. They were basically hypocritical. And I feel really sorry for Alex here, because he had to do a video about it, and the video is available.
But one thing that we have to understand before we can even begin this discussion is the concept of the burden of proof. I did have some things to say, like I mentioned, but I think I'd rather just tackle some of the misrepresentations that I think we've just seen of the position of atheism. The first is a rather important case, which is, do we actually have anything to prove as non-believers in God? Atheism, as Abdullah quite rightly suggests, is thought of by many as simply a lack of belief in God. And the point was raised that no, that can't be the case, because a lack of belief in God entails some belief in the opposite, or at least a belief in a universe that can be explained without God. This isn't the case. Atheism is a claim to belief. It comes from the Greek, a meaning without, theos meaning God. It simply means living your life without the influence of a God. It's not an active position to hold. Many people would call it agnosticism, because we're simply saying, well, there's no good reason to believe in a God, but we're not saying that we believe there isn't one. But agnosticism is a claim to knowledge. Gnosticism is knowledge. Theism is belief. I simply say, I don't know, therefore I don't believe. Whereas the proposition seem to have to say that they also don't know, because nobody can know for certain, and yet they do believe. And what we need to see tonight, in order to agree with the proposition and have them win the debate, is the reason why they're able to take that extra step that we simply can't.
Yeah, so he's actually really addressing the burden of proof right here. So and putting it back on them, rightly so. I think that, to be fair in a debate, you would have to present arguments against it as well. I think that is something that would be required. Like, to be fair, you wouldn't just say, hey, it's all on them, I'm not going to even try, kind of thing. I think that you would have to at least proffer some reasons as to why the proposition is false. Although, what was the topic? What explains reality better than, does Islam explain reality better than Islam? I would probably go to, that our understanding of reality has come leaps and bounds in, science and things like that, independent of a God. I don't think atheism explains reality. I don't think that's what it's for. I think that's kind of a weird topic, and I was going to bring up this earlier. It's kind of a weird topic to say, because atheism, it isn't so much like, it doesn't try to explain reality. It just rejects the claims that others are making about reality, if that makes sense.
Yeah, as Matt Dillahunty frequently points out, it's an answer to one question. Do we believe? Are we convinced? No. That's it. That's all there is to it. It's not a worldview. It's not a whole set of axioms. It's not naturalism. It's not even humanism. It's just a starting point for, if we don't buy this whole bundle of nonsense and all the moral obligations that come with it, what do we do from here? But none of those answers are entailed by the position itself.
Right. And I think a better topic would probably be, does secular science explain reality better than Islam? But, I know that a lot of theists wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot barge pole, because science has a long track record, so methodological naturalism has explained a lot about reality, and, all religions, it's not just Islam, but also Christianity, hasn't done squat to explain reality to us. It just claims a reality and then doesn't stop claiming it. That's essentially what they do.
Just keep claiming.
Just stick by your guns. People will believe you one day.
Let me explain with an analogy that comes from a friend of mine called Matt Dillahunty, who has given the example of a gumball, a jar of gumballs. What's essentially happening here is, we've got a jar of gumballs, and we have no idea how many gumballs are in the jar. And the people to my right are pointing it and saying there are an even number of gumballs in that jar. And I say, you have no good reason to believe that. I don't believe you. And they say, oh, so you might, that entails that you think there's an odd number. Well, of course it doesn't. It just means I don't believe that there's an even number. Just because I don't believe that there's a God doesn't mean I do believe that there's not one. And that's an important point to make clear, because it demonstrates the fact that the burden of proof lies with the proposition. If you, ladies and gentlemen, are not convinced by either side in the debate this evening, then the default position has to be atheism. The default position has to be, there's no good reason to believe either way, and so we simply don't believe in Islam.
Yeah, that's just like the default position is there is no Blarney Stone on, nil non-God creation.
Blasphemy.
Right, but that's the default position. If we can't show, so the problem with the opposite way round, and I try to point this out to sort of make people aware of the problems of assuming things are true until they've shown to be false. okay, that if you're presented with something that's unfalsifiable, if you want to be intellectually consistent, if someone says, hey, there's a, Jesus is God, you have to believe it until it's proven false. So you automatically believe it and then wait for proof that it's false. Muhammad is the messenger of God, automatically believe it. The Blarney Stone is real, you have to believe it. To be intellectually consistent, you have to believe all these contradictory things. It just does not work. The better way is the skepticism way, which is where you basically don't believe stuff until you have evidence that it is true, and then you believe it. He's not wrong, because the opposite way round is just a quagmire of believing anything you're told. It's a very important point.
That's why the title of the debate is something of a false dichotomy.
I don't like the gumball analogy. I mean, it illustrates the point that you don't have to believe it's odd just because you don't believe it's even. But the issue with the analogy is that in the hypothetical, there is a jar full of gumballs. And what we're talking about when we're discussing with theists is whether there's even gumballs. Like, you've got a jar, and they're saying this is full of an odd number of gumballs, and we're not just saying I don't believe it's an odd number. We're saying show me the gumballs.
Well, I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. I think it's just to demonstrate that beliefs, the rejection of a belief does not entail the belief in its contradiction. So let me run you by, because I have an analogy that I use as well, called the shrouded room, right? You're standing around, there's a room next door with a door. There's no way you can tell what's in the next room. It seems, you can't seem to get into it. You don't, hear any sounds from it. There's no way. It's just, there's a room next door, and people are saying different things. Some people say there's a horse in the next room. Some people say there's a giraffe in the next room. Some people say that there's a spaceman in the next room. Just because you reject those because they can't seem to show you what's in the next room doesn't mean you're saying that there is nothing in the next room, right? You don't know what's in the next room.
I think that's a better example, because it's a very good description of how religions gain their power in the first place. As people are saying, in the next life, this is what happens, or that is what happens, or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm saying we know there's a door, but we don't know there's even a room on the other side.
Well, that's true. Yes. But it's just sort of saying, hey, people are claiming this thing that we cannot investigate. Just because you say, well, I don't believe there is an elephant in the next room, you're not saying, well, there is nothing in the next room. That's not your claim. You're just saying, I don't believe it is the thing you're saying, because you've got no evidence to show me that that is the case. And that's the one I generally use.
Yeah, I like that better.
And a lot of people have pamphlets. They have a book that says there's an elephant in the next room. Great. This other guy over there has one saying that there's a giraffe in the next room. How do we tell? These things that are uninvestigatable, we just have to say we don't know what's in the next room. Yeah, or then maybe you're right. There may not be another room at all. So Mummy's right. They agree with you. Yeah, I agree. It may be a false door.
Yeah. A Wile E. Coyote painted on a portal.
Yeah.
But the burden of proof certainly lies with the proposition. But that's not a problem, because there were a number of arguments put forward in an attempt to try and fulfill that proof, which it's worth briefly touching on. For instance, when you bring up the point, Abdullah, about matter, you asked the question, what are superstrings made of? Talking about, I presume, the kind of quantum strings that are thought to be, according to string theory, the basis of the universe. And you say, essentially, well, what are these made of? And what would that be made of? And what would that be made of? Well, the answer is quite simple. It's I don't know, and neither do you. And that's the point. Neither of us know. And so I'm simply saying that because we have no reason to know what's at the basis of this reality, what's at the basis of matter, the best thing we can do is throw up our hands and say, until good evidence comes along to believe that it is due to some kind of divine supernatural creator, let's not do so. And certainly let's not instill that supernatural creator with certain qualities that are an extra leap of faith that you can't take that extra step before you've made the first. Also, on the point of change, you talk about infinite regress, which is problematic. Of course, the problem of everything needing a cause, everything needing an explanation for its existence, whether you frame it as a contingency argument or a cosmological argument, of course, trivially applies to the creator himself, or of course the creator, of course, unless you adopt something of a Kalam cosmological argument that says that, well, we're not talking about everything needing a cause, because, of course, like I say, it would trivially include the creator of the universe. Instead, it's things that begin to exist that need a cause. It's things that have some kind of that have some kind of cause that brings them into existence. The fact of the matter is, we have no experience with that. You say that there are atheists who believe that things can come out of nothing. There's no good reason to think that something can't come out of nothing. People often say it's ridiculous to suggest that something can come from nothing. You're not all worried that a hippo has just materialized in your living room while you're out here, but your living room isn't nothing. In fact, there's no nothing in the universe. Lawrence Krauss has shown that if you take away, or written that if you take away every piece of matter.
Oh no, audio is static. Audio has gone down, gone boom. Okay,
yeah, it's getting a little robot-y.
I'm gonna log. Give me 1 sec. I'll try just redoing the video, but StreamYard is it's being such a horrible person to me. A horrible program to me.
We're personifying the software.
Well, you always personify the things that irritate you. You know what I mean? Like, I think that sort of frustration and anger are very personal things. You get personal with things that are making you angry. I'm not sure why that is. I've got to be honest with you. It's just sort of we generally personify things that are annoying us. Where is it? There.
I wonder if that's where one potential source of where the mythology of gods comes from is by imbuing agency into inanimate things so that we can blame them. We say, oh, this cursed weather, this is, the spring's fault. Therefore, there is a being of spring choosing to vex me.
Maybe.
Or something like that.
I mean, that's sort of animism kind of thing. There is a spirit of the thing that I'm doing that. Where is it? There it is. Share audio. Yes. Hopefully, I won't have to log out. I do apologize again. I dislike technical issues. I really do.
Technical difficulties. Live broadcasting.
Is it still choppy?
I can't hear anything right now. It appears to be muted.
Oh, all right. Just give me 1 second. I'm sorry. I do apologize. 1 second.
More buttons. There we go. I just got my pirate flag ready. So, avast ye lubbers. While Mark is away, we're going to do the usual thing and remind you that there's a few different ways that you can support this channel. For one thing, there's the memberships that we saw a little bit earlier. Left-Handed Jedi gave away 5 memberships. There's also super chats. There's also super thanks that you future people can leave on videos, like a super chat, but after the fact. Additionally, there are free ways to help. You can like the video, you can subscribe, and most of all, you can share this video around, because Mark produces stuff like this all the time. I mean, at least every week. So, bring your friends.
Yeah, I always like to see more people in the community. I think the community is awesome. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Amber. I really do appreciate it. It's I think
it's our commercial break.
Yeah, commercial break. Yeah, sponsored by VPNs. Just advertise a VPN of some sort.
Yes.
the cosmic VPN.
But perhaps not everybody. Muhammad, while in his 50s, to allow anyone, it is not lawful for a woman who believes.
That's definitely. But yeah, that's where the sound went.
Worldview is moral realism. The conclusion is, of course, that the universe has a cause, and that's the definition of a circular argument. Now, there's no good reason to think that something can't come out of nothing. People often say it's ridiculous to suggest that something can come from nothing. You're not all worried that a hippo has just materialized in your living room while you're out here, but your living room isn't nothing. In fact, there's no nothing in the universe. Lawrence Krauss has shown that if you take away, or written that if you take away every piece of matter from a finite space, and you remove not just the matter, but the radiation and everything that we can conceivably cool matter, it still weighs something. Now, that might be a practical limitation. Perhaps there is nothing somewhere and we just haven't been able to access it or create it by removing the sufficient matter in the universe. But the fact of the matter is we have no experience with nothing. And so to say something can't come from nothing is an unjustifiable claim. We've never had any nothing to try it with. In fact, the only time there was nothing, if there was nothing ever at all, must have been before the universe was created. And so the only thing that has actually begun to exist in any meaningful sense is the universe itself. And if
Yeah, I love what he said here. So what beginning to exist rather than changes in state of things that already exist? So I missed a super
Oh
chat.
shit! There's an elephant in my living room. Where did that come from?
Left-handed Jedi, I'm so sorry. Your 6-month membership thing. God is the Higgs field. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's pertinent for this one. Yeah. So sorry I missed that. I just sort of rebooted stuff up and saw it. Thank you so much. But yeah, so we don't seem to have things being created. Like things just seem to be like I sort of make an analogy of the ship of Theseus for this one. Like, at what point is a ship created? Like, if a ship is all built with planks and stuff, is it a ship before it has a mast? When does it become a ship? Is it a ship if it sails out and it's forgotten to put on the anchor? Was it not a ship while it did that? It seems to be just our description of changes of state that we say, hey, this thing came into existence.
Yeah, we've seen similar analogies in other places. To bring up Matt Dillahunty again, he occasionally makes the argument: at what point does lumber become a chair? Like when the fourth leg is put on, when the back is put on. What if you does it need arms to be a chair?
Yeah.
Like, if you never put arms on, is it never completed? Do you have to varnish it before it's a chair? Like, where do you put the line?
And this is sort of an answer or an argument against sort of the Neoplatonic people who say that there's these ideal forms kind of thing that exist somewhere, and not in the physical world, that is the ideal form of all chairs kind of thing. But a stump can be a chair. So when does that Platonic form get created? Was it the first time somebody looked at a stump and said, hey, I can sit on that? Was suddenly this Platonic ideal just popped into existence of a chair that got better? Like, I don't know how this would work. It just seems to be our evaluation of things around us, and a chair just seems to be something you can sit on. And it's simply descriptive. It's not, to quote Kent Hovind, maybe the stump doesn't care if it's chair. Yeah. Or not a chair.
For one of the internet's biggest lolcows, Kent occasionally gets something right. And it stopped clock twice a day, I guess.
I don't think he's ever said that. I don't think he's ever said
that. Oh, alas.
Show me a stump giving birth to a non-stump.
Yes.
I can't.
The argument is that everything that begins to exist has some kind of cause, and so the universe must have some kind of cause. Well, everything that begins to exist is the universe. So when you say everything that begins to exist needs a cause, you're just saying the universe needs a cause. And the conclusion is, of course, that the universe has a cause. And that's the definition of a circular argument. Now, that's the first point.
That's a good point.
That is a good point.
Even making the argument is it's a hidden circular, because just like Ray Comfort gets a lot of shit for smuggling in creator when he asks who created the universe. He's smuggling in his idea. But just even asking the question is assuming the conclusion.
Yeah, what caused the universe? I mean, the Kalam does, it tries to do a thing of, well, the universe has a cause, but it assumes that the universe begun to exist. And if the universe is existence, then that doesn't make a lot of sense. Like,
Oh,
how
yeah,
can
it's-
existence not exist? I don't.
It's
very
incoherent on a number of levels. You know,
Yeah.
I've mentioned the time one before. Like, how can you make something? How can you bring something into existence that already exists? So,
Right.
if time is already running, for things to change, then time is already there. So you can't create time then. If you go
Mhm.
back to before, for lack of a better term, then there is no time for you to make the change to cause time to start running. So
Yeah.
it's incoherent on several levels. I've been
Mhm.
chasing this particular dog from the other perspective,
Okay.
noting that nothing in reality has one single cause.
Right.
Whereas Alex is coming at it the other way, who says there needs to be a cause at all, or can a cause
Right.
even make sense?
Second thing I'd like to do, I'm not sure how long I've been up here now. I haven't got a good track on time. How long? 5 minutes. Okay, so about halfway through. So let me put to you some of the things that I was thinking of putting forward. Did I not have anything to respond to in the propositions case? I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of discussion of metaphysics this evening. There's going to be a lot of discussion of arguments for the existence of God, the existential arguments, let's call them. And so I wanted to take a brief moment to bring up what might seem like an irrelevancy, but is certainly not. Islam teaches that there is an objective basis to morality in the world. That when you say something is right or wrong, that is a true statement. And that's as true as something like the proposition that the earth orbits the sun. It is a matter of fact. And that means that part of the reality that we're trying to describe with the Islamic worldview is moral realism. There have to be moral truths that are as real as the metaphysical claims that it's making. And what that means, ladies and gentlemen, is that if you find moral claims within the doctrines of Islam that you don't agree with, then you don't agree with Islam. So I want to consider something.
That's a really good argument. That is really good. Because if you're, well, it's kind of, yeah, like if you agree that Islam claims these moral truths, but usually what I've found, to sort of, I might be undercutting Alex a bit, but what I've found is that theists will agree that there's objective morality, ignore the moral pronouncements that they disagree with, and just take the ones that they do. They will just say, hey, it reinterpret it. It didn't mean it's okay to eat, have slaves. It doesn't mean what it says, and then sort of rationalize why it's still objective morality.
The moral elements of this religion and see if it's something that you would be able to throw your weight behind. There are, of course, many examples that I could choose from, but one of the most important areas and one of the most often spoken about areas is the treatment of women. Now, this is problematic because a lot of the time people will point to practical examples. They'll say, look at Saudi Arabia. Women weren't able to drive until very recently, but this is ridiculous. Saudi Arabia can quite easily be shown to not be a real Islamic state, and it's very easy to make a case that that's the state and not the religion. So let's turn to the doctrine itself. Let's turn to the scripture. What do we find? Well, there's a very famous verse in the Quran, and I'm sure this is nothing that the proposition hasn't come up against before, but I'd like to hear some kind of justification for these things, and I'm sure they'll be able to provide them. In the Quran, Surah 4, verse 34, I'm sure you're familiar with, is the verse which I'll quote to you. Men are in charge of women by right of what Allah has given one over the other, and what they spend for maintenance from their wealth. So righteous are women who are devoutly obedient, guarding in their husband's absence what Allah would have them guard. But those wives from whom you fear arrogance, first advise them, then if they persist, forsake them in bed, and finally strike them. But if they obey you, seek no means against them. Indeed, Allah is ever exalted and grand. So what we have is a situation where the wife is disobedient. Of course, first you try to talk them out.
So the audio sound just cut out strangely enough. So he's talking about Nisha, I believe.
Yeah, it's hard to hear. That's a problem in the original video. That's not your sound. That's not StreamYard. It's in the original. And Muhammad didn't want to be talked about in that moment, I guess.
I guess.
I do enjoy how in the middle of that verse, Alex couldn't resist throwing in an eye roll.
Well, Nisa is basically the verse on women. it basically tells them what their requirements are, what they should be doing, how they should. And this is a direct translation from the Quran. It has been, but like I said, like they try to make justifications for the verse. They try to say, well, you know, it's just hitting them with a symbolically with a sort of thing, but it doesn't say anything about that in the verse. And why hit them at all? Why isn't that when a man isn't doing the right thing, a woman can't, you know, hit them with something? It's certainly not equality, and it isn't sort of good relationship advice to, well, if somebody isn't doing what you want, admonish them, you know, deny any sexual congress and then hit them with something. That is horrible advice, even if it is symbolic. It is terrible relationship advice. So yeah, I completely agree with him. It's an awful verse, but you know, I'm sure they have some rationalizations on why it's not as bad as it sounds, or you know, it makes sense for some reason. I don't think it does. But he's appealing to the crowd. He's not trying to convince the speakers that it's wrong. He's trying to say, hey, if you disagree with this verse, then you disagree with Islam, because it is purported to be an objective, you know, reality that is the right thing to do. The sound issues are not me, by the way. Just clarifying that it is the video.
And Alex will be audible momentarily. This only lasts a few seconds, if I recall.
Yeah.
Now, okay. Perhaps this isn't a thing about women. Perhaps this is just a thing about violent behavior. It's just about striking people who are disobedient, and not even disobedient to the husband, but disobedient to God. If someone's being disobedient to God, then they need to be set right. And perhaps the only way to do that sometimes is with physical violence. Well, okay, if that's the case, then let's look at a comparison from a hadith reported by Al-Hakim on disobedient men. So this is in reference to wives talking about their husbands. She should not beat him in case she is stronger than he. If he is more in the wrong than she should plead with him until he is reconciled. If he accepts her pleading, all well and good, and her plea will be accepted by Allah. Well, if he is not reconciled with her, her plea will have reached Allah in any case. So if a woman is disobedient to a man or disobedient to a god, whichever framework you want to think about it, the first thing that the wife should do, if the man is disobedient, is to try and talk him out of it. And if that doesn't work, it's not a problem, because Allah's going to hear it anyway. But if a wife's disobedient to a husband, then sure, he should still try and talk her out of it. But if that doesn't work, well, then you can strike them. Seems to be a bit of an inequality here. And that inequality is only highlighted when we look at the rest of that same hadith. It's preceded by the following.
So he's on shakier ground here. I get what he's saying, but he's on shaky ground because these are the hadiths. These are basically writings about the life of Muhammad that are not the central core holy text, but they are writings on the life of how they should be interpreted by various people who were in the area at the time. Because don't forget, Muhammad didn't write anything. He was apparently illiterate, which makes the miracle of the Quran all that much greater for some reason. I'm not sure why. So apparently God can impart his wisdom into a Muhammad, but he can't teach him how to write, apparently. It's kind of shakier, but you know, that definitely is one of the interpretations that was around at the time. 100% that's in the hadiths, and the hadiths have all kinds of things. The other verse I like to bring up is how you cut the hands off a thief for stealing. And okay, you can do that, sure, but how is that moral? And how does it solve the problems of thievery? If somebody has their hands cut off, they're not going to find employment anywhere. They're just going to be a beggar, or you know, steal stuff with their other hand until that's cut off. It seems like a stupid solution to a problem. You know, we think about how we solve the problems in modern life, like somebody stealing. Well, you get them training and education so they can work and don't have to steal anymore. You know, you address the cause of their stealing. But, you know, this basically says, no, make them worse off.
Well, I think that is the point, is it's several levels of tangent aside from the points we're getting at tonight, but they're there is a compelling argument to be made that laws like this, they're intended to kill the offender. Like, no hands, go starve to death. But you're not directly killing them. It's the consequences of their own actions lead to their demise. You're just enforcing justice. And that way you don't have to feel bad when they die because they can't get food.
Barnaby Wild, $5. Good night, everyone. I'm too frustrated with a few unrelated things. I'm so sorry, Barnaby. I hope it turns out well, mate. A frustration. Everybody experiences frustration. Best wishes. Hope it works out. Take a breath. Be kind to yourself. Totally understandable. Thanks, Barnaby. I really appreciate it, mate.
It is not lawful for a woman who believes Allah to allow anyone. It is not lawful for a woman who believes in Allah to allow anyone in her husband's house while he dislikes it. Okay, well, back in the times that this book was written, men were primarily the owners of wealth, so it makes sense if the man is the owner of property, perhaps it should be his decision who's allowed on the property. That's not so much a problem. But let's continue. She should not go out of the house if he dislikes it, and should not obey anyone who contradicts his orders. It's getting a bit more questionable now. And to finish off, the very next sentence is, she should not refuse to share his bed. And you can take that to mean what you will. But I'll remind you that if you find any of this objectionable, then you should find objectionable the doctrines from which they spring. Another thing I'd like to talk about, and I'm certain, because I've certainly seen Mr. Hijab respond to this in the past, and it's something I'd love to dive into, is the marriage of the Prophet to Aisha.
Whoa, yeah.
Shots fired.
Yep. And this is a shot fired over the bow of Muslims all the time. I think that the framing that Alex has done is very good because it brings it into the debate. But a lot of people just like to be crude about it. And I think he's done a very, very graceful thing in the way that he's raised it here. That it is a reason why we think that Muhammad was not some kind of messenger of God. Because somebody with the wisdom of God behind them would know that you don't marry a 6-year-old. You know, that is grotesque, absolutely grotesque. And I'm sorry, trigger warning for everybody out here. It is a problem. It's a problem for Islam, which is why they usually they'll do anything not to talk about it.
Unless you're Daniel Hakikaju.
Yeah, Hakikaju will lean into it, which is horrifying to see, quite frankly. Horrifying to see.
Certainly the Muslim members of our audience this evening will be aware of, but perhaps not everybody. Muhammad, while in his 50s, married a young girl called Aisha. And I say young, she was 6 at the time. Not 16 or 60, but 6. Now, of course, he didn't consummate the marriage when she was 6 years old. That would be quite outrageous. He waited another 3 years until she was 9. And the proposition has to defend the idea that that was ever morally permissible. And I think that's my time. Is that my time? Yeah. Well, that's all I've got, but believe me, I have more. So we'll leave it for the rebuttal stage. But thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for coming today. Thank you very much for coming. It's first day of Ramadan for us, and we're happy to have you. Now, I've come here, me and Abdullah, actually, we've come here to refute magic.
So he's so what I've noticed is they sort of have had one speaker who is sort of in academia and one speaker who is more sort of popularist. I think they thought that Alex O'Connor was going to be the more, he's a, successful YouTuber kind of thing, not realizing he was actually, a degreed philosopher, which is not what they were after. I think it was actually the other doctor on the atheist side that was probably the less of a threat to them. But this guy's just a popular YouTuber kind of thing, and it kind of shows. His arguments are, to say terrible is an understatement. It's absolutely horrible arguments.
Oh yeah,
he's the one putting it on. Yeah,
he's a huge Islamic apologist. I think he's got 1 or 2 million subscribers, right. And for him, he may actually believe. Like, I'm not discounting that, but for him, it's all about the money. It's
Yeah.
it's arguments from emotion. It's
Mhm.
the various other fallacies, but mostly it boils down to intuition. You
Yeah.
should believe Islam because, I mean, don't you wanna though? And that's
Yeah.
what he's got.
And sort of the claims that he makes, it's all claims, and it's all just preaching. It seems very preachy to me, like he's preaching to a audience. It kind of reminds me of evangelicals. So I think they're kind of picking up on the evangelicals' sort of appeals to emotion, basically, which is a logical
There is that,
fallacy.
yeah. I mean, we
Which
know
is a
that
fallacy.
the Islamic apologists tend to run a couple of entire generations behind
Yeah.
the Christian apologists, and then
Mhm.
get the next edition of Dwayne Gish's book or whatever and upgrade
Yeah.
their arguments or whatever. And Muhammad Hijab has used the internet to come up to date with where the Christian apologist arguments are, and then translate them into Islam. And that's another reason
Yeah.
he's so big, is he's, from their point of view, he's an entire generation ahead of his contemporaries in the sophistication of his apologetics.
Native Atheist for $20. Thank you, Native Atheist. Would love to see you debate Muslims, Mark. I've had a couple of debates against Muslims. I debated Nadir simply because Nadir said no atheist would debate, so I got a real bug in my shorts to debate Nadir because he's saying that no atheist would debate him. I think that I would like to do more debates against Muslims. I think that the arguments that we have against theists, it makes no difference whether it's a Muslim or a Christian. A lot of people claim, oh, atheists don't have anything, we need Christianity because atheists don't have any arguments against Muslims. Not so. Our arguments are against theists, not Christians in particular. They work just as well. So yeah, but thank you so much, Native Atheist. I really appreciate it. There should be a list of my debates. Didn't I debate another Muslim on something? I can't remember what, though. They kind of are blurring into one another. And there might be another one on there. Thank you, PC. Really appreciate. Pragmatic Crystal for the win. Pragmatic Crystal. Amazing.
Wait a minute, what did you say?
Sorry?
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
Let me say that one more time. We've come here to refute magic. It's actually an interesting magic trick where there is no bunny, there's no hat, and in fact, there's no magician at all.
What is this analogy?
I don't know.
If there's a magic trick with no bunny, no hat, and no magician, what are we talking about? Like, I don't know what his analogy is. Sounds like there's no trick. Do we know any magic tricks that have no magician? Is it a robot? I don't know what this analogy means.
Yeah, he needs to clarify if he wants to get any traction with this.
It's the proposition that something can come from nothing. Not only from nothing, ladies and gentlemen, but from nothing and by nothing. The Quran says, أَمْ خُلِقُوا مِنْ غَيْرِ شَيْءٍ أَمْ هُمُ الْخَالِقُونَ أَمْ خَلَقُوا السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ بَلْ لَا يُوقِنُونَ.
Yeah, what he said.
Who cares what the Quran says? Like, you've got to demonstrate that's actually true, not just quote it. I could write a book that says, that the Blarney Stone magically summoned the universe from nothing. It doesn't make it true.
They created from nothing.
The Quran says all sorts of interesting things. For instance, in various places, it says that men were created out of congealed blood in Surah 96:2. Men were created from clay in 1526. Men were just created from dust in 359. Men were created out of nothing, 1967. And created from a sperm drop, Surah 16:4. So, yeah, it says a lot of things. Some of them contradict each other.
Yeah.
Or were they themselves the creators of themselves? Now, we've heard Alex today, for the second time I've heard him say this. He says that the universe may have come into existence from nothing. Minute 14 to 15 in his video, Does the Universe Have a Cause?
Those are not great notes. I probably would prefer him to use lined paper and sort of maybe, yeah, at least he's taking notes. At least he's taking notes. I'll give him that. I'll give him that.
He says, when the universe came into existence, it well and truly came into existence from nothing.
No, that's not what he said. That's not what he said. He said it could have come into existence from nothing, that we don't know if that is possible or not. He didn't say it did. He said it may very well have. Like, you've got to understand that that is not a claim to knowledge. That is basically a alternative to the deductive argument that's saying nothing else explains it except a God. Right? It's an alternative explanation.
Now, wait a minute. Ladies and gentlemen, I have a challenge. That's an active claim. He said, I'm not here to make any active claims.
He didn't. He didn't. That's not an active claim. You're basically saying, because I say, hey, it may have been the Blarney Stone, that I am claiming it's the Blarney. No, I'm not. I'm asking you, how do you know it's not that thing? I'm asking you to disprove that option. And it hinges upon your argument being deductive. Yeah, this is a straw man of Alex's argument. Absolutely.
Sorry, that is an active claim.
No, it's not.
Look at the syntax of that particular sentence.
Yeah, we did.
You're saying the universe came into existence from nothing.
No,
don't pretend to be passive. Oh, I don't know. No, you do know. You're making a statement. Either you know what you're saying or you don't.
Yeah, the mischaracterization, it goes downhill from here. There's a relatively famous clip that's been floating around the internet for years that comes from this debate that we'll probably see later on, where Muhammad asks Alex, do you believe that something happened at the beginning of everything? I forget how he phrases it. There must be a necessary cause of some kind or whatever. And Alex hesitates, like, what the fuck are you talking about? And finally goes, sure. And then Muhammad goes, that's God. Mic drop. Like, just claiming you get a yes on one thing and just go, that's God, therefore I win. You can't just call things God because the other person conceded there might be that thing, you know?
Yeah. You can define God as anything. You can define my coffee cup as God. You can define this computer as God. It doesn't, okay, you can define it like that. But then your idea of God becomes meaningless and your Quran becomes useless. If the universe had a cause and that's God, why do we need a Quran if it's not this agent that actually wants things of us? But we might as well throw the Quran out at that point.
Yeah,
it's just inflation.
We could concede. We shouldn't, but we could concede. Okay, maybe the universe does need a first cause. Maybe it's even a thinking agent somehow outside of the universe. Now demonstrate that your specific mythology represents what that being wants.
So I want to sort of outline what he's doing here. It's like saying, well, your wife is at home. And I'm saying, well, I don't know that's true. She very well may be out doing shopping. She very well may be out taking a walk. She may be, and saying it very well may be the case. He's saying, you're saying your wife is down the shops. It's like, no, that's not an active claim. You've claimed that my wife is somewhere, and I've said there's other possibilities. How do you know that one is true? And you're saying, no, you're claiming the opposite. All of this is basically covered by Alex already, sort of saying, claiming that your claim is not true or saying that your claim is not true is not saying the opposite. And by extension, saying that there are other options than the God you're proposing does not mean that you're saying that that other option is in fact true. Does that make sense? I feel like I'm sort of, yeah.
I mean, it tracks to me, but I'm probably biased because I think the same thing.
What, logically? Yeah.
Logic
Tell
is
me how
itself
the
a
universe
bias.
Yeah.
came into existence from nothing and by nothing, ex nihilo. I want to know. Tell me how that's possible metaphysically, ontologically, cosmologically.
Tell me how yours is possible, Muhammad. You're saying that your God also did an ex nihilo. And in fact, I think, if I remember correctly, the Islamic version is even more dramatic than the Christian version. The Christians, Yahweh begins by floating over the waters. So the universe already exists. There's already time. There's already space. There's already fucking water.
Yeah.
Muhammad, or Allah, rather, makes the whole ball of wax literally out of nothing.
Mm-hmm. But here's the thing as well. He's saying, show me it ontologically. You don't show people things ontologically. Ontology is the actual stuff behind it. You have to sort of be epistemic about it. You have to show things by epistemology. You can't show somebody something ontologically. You can't. He doesn't understand the very basis of what he's saying. That ontology is the reality, the actuality behind everything. And epistemology is our explanations, how we know things. You can't show me God ontologically. Show me that. You can't, and I wouldn't expect you to. I would expect you to have an epistemology to show that God is real, because you can't access an ontology. It's so silly.
But what if God showed you God ontologically? Because being all-powerful and omnipotent even, just because it doesn't make sense doesn't mean he can't do it.
From first principles, give me the answer, please. But it's interesting because in his other video, Something from Nothing, where he was debating the contingency argument.
Oh, and my favorite weasel drops in, gifted 1 readership. Thank you so much, Tap. Blastermaster 80 was gifted a readership. Thank you. Yeah, and a big shout out. Thank you to the mods. Look, if somebody's got a name like that, I seriously, I don't need them in my chat. Thank you so much. Yeah, I get what they're trying to say. If you do want to be unblocked, just send me an email explaining why, and I will look at it and make a decision on it. Thank you very much.
With a fellow American, or an American man. Minute 48, he says this, listen to this. He agrees with the radio guy that was speaking to him that the universe is a necessary existence. Wait a minute. What's going on here, ladies?
Okay, so what does necessary and contingent mean? Okay, so necessary things are things that contingent things rely on, but it's kind of relative, right? So when we're saying necessary in this context, usually we're saying necessary for the universe or necessary for existence kind of thing. So for instance, my parents are necessary to me. I'm contingent upon them, but I'm not necessary for my parents. What Alex argues is that, hey, if determinism is true, then I'm necessary as well. But I'm not sure I agree with that. I think my parents could have existed and not had me and still be my parents. Like those two could exist, just say they never met each other. They could still have an existence without me ever existing. That's why I'm contingent on them, and they're necessary for me, but not the other way round, right? So I don't 100% agree with Alex, but if determinism is true, there's only one way the universe could have come out, so everything's kind of necessary. But that's what we mean. But the thing is that if the universe is necessary, it just means that it's not contingent on any other thing. If the universe is all of existence, then it may be a necessary thing. It's not contingent on anything. Nothing gave the universe its current state. So that very well may be true. I don't get the
Yeah.
problem with that.
It's people like Muhammad like to misuse logical terminology because it creates a favorable impression that
Yeah.
isn't actually upheld by what he's saying in precise terms. In this case, necessary just means could not be any other way, whereas contingent means it is logically not impossible that it could have been another way.
Yes,
But
in another
for practical
possible way.
reasons, it could still be necessary.
Yeah, it still could be necessary. Absolutely.
Ladies and gentlemen, what does necessary existence mean? A necessary fact is a fact that cannot be any other way. 2 + 2 = 4. That's eternally going to be the case. So a necessary existence is eternal.
That depends on the system you're using. If you have, say, base 3, then, 2 + 2 is going to equal 11. I know the numbers that we use aren't the same as the values they produce, et cetera, et cetera. I'm just pointing out that, like, you have to assume a whole bunch of shit in order to make that kind of axiomatic statement.
Yeah, because it's not 11 at that point. It's not 11 is necessarily a binary a decimal functionality. At that point, it would be sort of 1-1. But yeah, no, Tap's right. In base 3, there is no 11. He's absolutely right. Sorry, Ember.
Details.
But it's 1-1. It's not 3. That's the thing. It's not 4. Sorry, it's not 4. And plus, so when we're talking about it, we're talking the values of 2 and 2 are inherent to the decimal system. I think that's what he's trying to get across. But you're absolutely right that 4 in base 3 is not a thing. It doesn't exist. I get you.
It cannot be any other way. So wait a minute. If the universe is eternal, how could it come from nothing? Contradiction.
I'm sorry. So you're saying that the universe came from nothing and the universe is eternal. You're ascribing both of those arguments to Alex.
It's easy to argue that your opponent's arguments are incoherent when you present them as incoherent, or possibly just don't even understand them yourself in the first place.
So I think that eternal's a bad word. Now, I've said this many times. I think that if the universe did come from nothing, our local presentation of space-time seems local to our universe. So if the universe began, before that it was atemporal. It did not have time. There was no such thing as time. So if you're sort of saying, hey, it's eternal, it could be. But I prefer atemporal at the beginning. So there's no problem with that. There's no problem with the universe being atemporal and space-time emerging out of nothing. There's no problem with that. But you're using eternal as sort of linear time, that time is this thing independent from the universe, and that's not true. It's not independent from space. Space and time are one thing. They're the same thing, space-time. So it seems to be a misunderstanding of what time is and how it behaves. Like, I don't really know very many people that subscribe to a theory of time, that it's this linear thing that, is sort of one thing after another.
It's a contradiction. You can't have it both ways, my friend. And this is what atheism leads you to. Contradictory set of propositions. Either you have your cake or you want to eat it. What are you going to do with it?
You can have cake and eat it as well. It's just a phrase. It's just a thingo. I get what he's saying, but there's nothing contradictory about that.
It's true. Earlier today, I had cake and then I ate it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it just means that you're not doing it at the same time. I don't know.
Tell me now, did the universe come from nothing? If so, how so? That's an active claim. Is the universe a necessary existence? If so, how so? That is an active claim. Is it eternal? Just come on, please. Don't pretend to be innocent and agnostic. Number two, you could say, no, there's a multiverse, or there's an eternal fabric, or there's an eternal universe. But a multiverse has the propensity of being any other way. And I'm sure you study philosophy, you know what you're talking about. A possible existence or a contingent existence is defined by being able to be rearranged in any other way. If it can be arranged in another way, it's not necessary. It's possible or contingent. It's not necessary. So a multiverse cannot be a necessary existence because it can be arranged in another way.
No.
Yes. Well, yeah, but the cosmos around that multiverse may be necessary. That's the thing.
Yeah, because like if you had a multiverse, it depends on the set that you're applying to the multiverse. Like, is it in Islam, the 7 universes from Genesis? Well, what we call Genesis, or is it all universes, or is it all possible universes? Or how are you defining the set of multiverse? And if indeed it does include all universes, or even just all possible universes, then the collective cosmos is necessary, because when you define it that way, that it includes all possible universes, then it can only include all possible universes. It's tautological, so that makes it necessary, because it cannot be any other way.
I feel like he's just saying things that don't make any sense here. I'm really wondering what his argument is. I'm very confused.
It can be out of existence. So wait a minute. This is very important, guys. Hold on.
What are you doing? Like, seriously?
Hold on. You agree that there should and ought to be a necessary existence. If you agree with me on that, then you're not an atheist, because the necessary existence is the Islamic definition of God.
There it is.
Wowzers.
Wow.
That's not the Islamic definition of God, though, because that doesn't specify Islam. In fact, it doesn't even really specify a God.
It certainly doesn't specify theism in any way, shape, or form. It doesn't even get you to deism. Like it doesn't get you anywhere near what most people would consider a god. If you want to say, hey, whatever's necessary behind the universe, we're going to term that God. Okay, but nobody else is doing that. It's always a personal agent with will. Like, he's just defining a God into existence, basically. That doesn't work. Yeah, you're right, Spiegelbad. Like, Spinoza's God just was the natural laws of the universe and the universe in general. It wasn't really a God, and he didn't claim it to be, a God. He just called it that.
Qul huwa Allahu ahad. Say he is one and only. The self-sufficient, the independent, meaning the necessary existence.
What? Because your book says he's God, he's God? A book said a thing. Yes, a book did say a thing. I don't why is he so pleased at that? It doesn't. Okay.
Lam yalid wa lam yulad. He begets not, nor is he begotten, meaning he's eternal. If you say that there's a necessary existence, you cannot say you're an atheist.
What?
Why?
Why? There's a million things that could be a necessary thing. The Blarney Stone's a necessary thing. It's not a god. Therefore, I'm still an atheist. What are you talking about? Does he know what an atheist is? I don't think he knows what an atheist is.
He's
From an Islamic perspective.
big jump in reasoning there.
Yeah. Wow.
And from a philosophical one, moreover, we have to ask a question now. We're talking about Islam. So why is Islam any different from any other religion? Because Islam talks about one necessary existence, one independent, one self-sufficient,
No,
not
it doesn't.
three in one.
There's nothing in the Quran, at least not that I've ever seen. Now, granted, I haven't read it in the original Arabic like you're supposed to, but
Yeah.
it doesn't get into the philosophy of the Greek philosophy of necessary existence and whatnot. You know, it's just that's not no more than the Bible does.
Yeah, and I think the Quran talks more about being necessary as sort of necessary to live correctly rather than philosophically necessary. I'm not sure. I've never heard a Muslim argue that the Quran says that sort of Allah is a necessary being kind of thing. I've never heard this before. I think it says he has great power and all of this kind of stuff, but I don't think necessary being.
Three, not a triune God, not a multiplicity of gods, a plethora of gods, not a...
Yeah, he's got a plethora of angels, though. I mean, if you're looking at sort of the claims that it's making all kinds of claims, some of which we know that aren't true. It's got a plethora of angels, a plethora of other things, plethora of demons in it, jinn, basically. It's got other stuff in it rather than just God. Like you're acting like it's just a philosophical manual that says God is by himself and, all might and has all these things. But no, it's got more than that in it. And it's claiming about what God wants as well. You've got to show that to be the case.
Like,
not just, hey.
Why is it necessary for the necessary being to use Archangel Gabriel to communicate with Muhammad?
Right.
Why? Like, why do angels exist if he's all powerful and is directly interacting with all parts of the universe simultaneously? Like, what even is an angel in that context? So what Muhammad's talking about is clearly he's a heretic. He's making up his own shit outside of the religion that isn't supported by it.
And he's sort of taking these things that the Quran says and kind of conflating or building on them in a way that matches what he believes philosophically. Like he said, Allah is alone. That means he's necessary. Does it? Because that's not what it says. It says that Allah is alone. He's kind of just retrofitting the Quran to the philosophy of the day. And I don't think that
apologists never do that.
Oh, I've never seen that before.
Pantheism. And by the way, I have to make this clear now. It was a bit of a straw man argument because Alex came up and says that Abdullah said that the universe has a cause. He never said that in the statement. But he had these written things. We never use the word cause. You can have a necessary existence. You can make an ontological argument for a necessary existence without causation at all.
Okay, then the universe is necessary. I feel like he wants to special plea. He wants to say, well, God doesn't need a cause. Well, then why does anything need a cause?
Yeah. Why don't elephants just poof into the living room. That would be a fantastic argument for, young earth creation-y types, which there is a young earth movement within Islam. Dr.
Really?
Jason Lyle, the larger part of his income comes from selling young earth creation modules to Islamic apologists.
Oh, that's horrible.
Mm.
That's horrible.
There's a difference between possibility and contingency on the one hand, or necessity and causation. You don't even need to, you can have it. You don't believe in causation before the universe? Fallacy of composition? Have it, no problem.
Fallacy of composition? What are you talking about? A composition fallacy is attributing or putting the attributes of parts of something onto the whole, right? So saying, well, there's nothing in my cells that can think, therefore I can't think. That's a composition fallacy.
Mm-hmm.
Just because my cells don't have that property or that attribute doesn't mean the whole doesn't. And the division is the opposite way around, saying, because I can think, my cells must be able to think. That is a division fallacy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how he just described a composition fallacy. Like saying, well, the universe doesn't have a cause.
I think I don't know for sure because he didn't specify what the hell he's talking about, but I think he's pulling a tu quoque kind of thing.
Okay.
Because he's doing that by saying, the universe collectively is one thing, therefore it must have one cause for some reason, and then he's projecting that onto Alex and saying, it's not invalid when I do it because you're doing the same thing.
Right. It's weird. It's so strange.
You have to explain how there can be a world with only possible existences. How can there be a world with only possible existences? If you say there can't be,
as opposed to what? As opposed to a world without possible existences? How could a thing be actual if it's not possible?
But when we're talking about sort of possible worlds, like we're talking about this possible world, we're talking about if things could be different and not in violation of logic. Like, is there a possible world in which I married somebody else? Yes, there's nothing logically impossible about that. It's not something that we can say, hey, that would be completely impossible in another possible world. It's not like I don't get what he's saying, though. I don't understand.
Louder equals writer.
Maybe.
Like someone said earlier.
Yeah.
You're no longer an atheist from an Islamic perspective because you believe in an independent, self-sufficient thing that everything depends upon. And that is the ultimate explanation for all of existence. Now, a secondary point we need to make is that Islam, the concept of God, the Tawheed, the monotheism, is something not only intuitive, but it's something, as we've seen, that can be reasoned from first principles, ladies and gentlemen. And that's why already when we just look at the concept of God, so many of the major world religions are ruled out. Christianity is ruled out. Hinduism is ruled out. I would say Sikhism is ruled out. Why? Because of that pure monotheism, that respectable monotheism that Islam has to offer.
Respectable monotheism. Is there such
emotion,
a creature?
Appeal to intuition. And also Sikhism, why? Like he would say that, of course, because he's, a mainstream Muslim.
Mm-hmm.
But why though? Because Sikhism is Islam with extra enlightenment principles from Buddhism thrown in for good measure. You know? What's the problem?
It's not respectable, Ember. It's not respectable monotheism. It's
too humanist. Get that shit out of here.
Yeah. It's disrespectful monotheism. What the hell are you talking about? Like he hasn't defined in any way what makes a monotheistic religion respectable or not. He's just saying, hey, I don't think they have answered this question, therefore they're not true. You're not arguing against other religions. You're arguing against none of them are true. None of them. I would agree with this part. I don't think they're true either. But I don't think yours is true. This is more sort of, I think he's angling towards shifting the burden of proof. I think that is what he is doing. But we'll find out, I guess.
Maybe.
But in addition to that, as Abdullah alluded to, the meta-narrative of there being many prophets aforetime, many of them with the same message of Islamic monotheism, believing in one God and worshiping one God, is something which can be seen in the religious books. What Abraham said, what Moses said, what did they come and say? Even according to Old Testament literature, calling the people to monotheism. So, it's
calling the people. So what? The book says they call people. So what? So what if the book says it? I don't understand how that proves your point in any way. Because the book also says it was Yahweh, not Allah. I am so baffled as to what the hell he's talking about.
Yeah, and you get all the same baggage from the Old Testament, how there's clear echoes of polytheism and how what the being he calls Allah clearly was not the head god at the time, and then later things change. It's a really screwy thing. Yeah.
So if you're saying, hey, well, if it's polytheist, I hate to break it to you, but Yahweh was part of a pantheon. It was a polytheist religion in the Canaanites. It was only developed into monotheism later when El and Asherah and Baal were sort of absorbed into the same one, and they said, no, there is only one God. So I don't know why. I'm so confused as to what his argument.
Yeah, like if pure monotheism is the goal, then surely Muhammad would be a Zoroastrian. Because it's much more monotheistic than Islam based on the Old Testament.
Yeah.
Islam also has an inbuilt system of falsification. It works in a similar way to science in many ways.
I don't know if that's true.
I don't think it is.
Falsification of Allah. Okay, this is going to be good.
Dying.
Which I'm happy to take questions on the questions and answer or in the cross-examination. One, if this book was from other than God, the Quran says about itself, there would have been many contradictions. Chapter 4, verse 92. Number two, the inimitability challenge.
Contradictions with what? Itself?
I mean,
you pointed out contradictions with itself. Yeah.
It does. Like, who was the first Muslim? According to Surah 39:12, I, Muhammad, am commanded to be the first of those who bow to Allah in Islam. But Surah 7:143 says it's Moses. Surah 2:132 says it's Abraham. In fact, it expressly says, Allah hath chosen my faith for you, then die not except in the faith of Islam. So who is it? They can't all be right. So what are we talking about here?
Yeah, and let's face it, a lot of the Muslim things that they've been abrogated. Which means that they've changed. It's so wow.
Try and produce something like it. And there is a quantifiable way of doing so, which we can talk about.
Try and produce something like it. You mean like the Book of Mormon? that something.
I took a stab at writing a holy book when I was younger. It was kind of fun. Got the whole creation myth going down. It's a lot like writing fantasy. Weirdly.
Yeah, I would imagine so. Or mythology, sure. Yeah. I think Tolkien did a really good mythology for not just one land, but multiple lands and multiple religions. So, and that was a gorgeous sort of, creation myth and how the world got sort of attacked by darkness and stuff. It was one of his creations that did it. It's a really cool bit of mythology.
Oh, it's a much better myth. How reality is a song and the dark forces are the discordant notes. I mean, it explains why we call this the universe, the one song.
Yeah.
Tolkien's proof of Tolkien. or
Yeah.
proof of Middle Earth,
Argument,
whatever.
Argument ad token.
Yes. Frodo lives.
About in the question and answers. Number 3, that Islam makes predictions about the future, and it specifies time and place. And this is my claim. It's the only religion to make a series of predictions about the future, none of which have not materialized.
Oh, really?
None of which have not materialized.
Okay, let's check into that one. Not prophecies, predictions of Islam. Let's see. Well, there. At first, I'm getting a bunch of end times predictions. So technically, what Muhammad said is wrong because he said none of the predictions have not materialized. The end times one haven't materialized because we're not to the end times yet. But what else have we got here?
Are so vague, like their skins will bear witness against them as to what they have been doing. And they say, oh, well, that shows that, it predicted fingerprinting would be invented. Is that what that means? Does it mean people would be whipped in some way? That applies too. Like, what the hell? They will alter Allah's creation. So that's a prophecy of plastic surgery?
Or glasses.
Yeah. And when mountains are made to move, they're claiming, oh, that's the invention of dynamite. We still can't move mountains. Do you know that? Like, we can't. What? Yeah, we can move very large earth with dynamite and stuff. We still can't move mountains. We generally just blow them up. I don't. What?
Or from another point of view, we could move mountains before Islam was even a thing. Like if you're considering, taking a rock and moving that rock and then taking the next rock and doing it piece by piece like that. The pyramids were around for thousands of years before Muhammad rode off into the desert.
Right.
So that was a thing we had been able to do.
Do you know we made mountain? That there was a town in England that had what was called a hill, and it was like almost like it was a certain amount of distance too low to be called a mountain. And so to get tourism, there's a movie about it called the Englishman that went up a hill and came down a mountain kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because they just took dirt and stacked it up until it was high enough to be considered a mountain.
They literally made a mountain out of a molehill.
They made a mountain. Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if it was a mole. I don't know if a mole was involved at all, but sure.
There was probably a mole somewhere on the hill. I don't know.
Oh yeah, let's just assume. Sure. I mean, it is England, or I think it was Wales. Actually, I'm not sure where it actually was, but I think it was sort of in one of the sort of countries in the United Kingdom, not England itself.
Whereas with anyone you want to mention who makes predictions of the future, at least some of their predictions will be falsified. And I'm willing to be tested on this. Test it.
I'm willing to be tested on things that can't be tested. Yeah, well done. Well done.
Super.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe we should look up failed prophecies.
Oh, that might be a little more fruitful.
I mean, another prophecy that sort of comes to mind that they sort of say was fulfilled was the fact that Muhammad's uncle was an atheist and remained so until he died, even though he was, very closely involved with Muhammad, the prophet of the religion, right? And he thought it was complete crap. His uncle thought it was crap. Muhammad made the prophecy. Get this is great. Muhammad made the prophecy that his uncle would die an atheist.
Yeah, I remember that one.
What
came
a prophecy.
Up in one of Matt's debates.
Yeah, what a prophecy, right? Because if you know that you're full of crap and your uncle knows about it, you can just go, oh, I predict he'll die an atheist. That's not a stretch. Like if you are aware that you're making it up, and your uncle doesn't believe you because he knows you so well, it's a pretty easy prediction to make. Like, it's not a stretch.
Plot
Like,
twist. The uncle becomes a Christian.
Yeah, I mean, that would be hilarious. But, you know, it's just, especially maybe you've said to your uncle, look, I know it's not real, but it helps keep the people under control and stuff. That's, oh, wow. I've had that said to me, and it's like, wow. Like, you don't think somebody who's making stuff up can't predict that someone won't believe them. It's like the Christians when they say, oh, well, they predicted there would be naysayers and scoffers. And it's like, what?
Or
There were
Jesus's
naysayers?
family. But
Right.
not only Jesus's family not believing him. And remember, Jesus is a figure in Islam as well. He's just not
Yes,
the Son of God.
Right,
But
right.
Jesus, not only did his family not believe him, his ability to do miracles turned off when he was around his family because they didn't believe in him. But he's all powerful. Okay.
About all powerful. Don't.
It's falsifiable. And in fact, this falsifiability is even stronger than the scientific one. Why? Because in scientific falsifiability, everything is susceptible to falsifiability.
Yeah.
Sorry, can you, in falsifiability is susceptible to falsifiability. So it sounds like maybe he's going for the problem of induction. But yes, if falsifiability stops working, if we falsify things and then they work, like if we falsify that, I don't know, iron can levitate, and then it starts levitating, then we're falsifying falsifiability. But that's kind of not happening. I don't know what are you talking about? This is weird. This is just weird.
He's speaking in a deliberately unclear manner.
Oh, it's bafflingly strange.
Everything that's done now, if I do a scientific experiment, now it can be falsified. But with
Well, no, you're falsifying the hypothesis. I don't think he understands what the difference between a hypothesis and an experiment is. Like, experiment is the testing phase. It's where we set up a way to falsify the hypothesis. Wow. Okay.
with a retrospective perspective, a hindsight perspective, if predictions have been made of the future, we can see whether those predictions are right or wrong. And we can talk about those predictions of, there's a book coming.
So you're basically claiming that you'll be willing to be falsified on predictions that have not in fact come true yet. Pretty sure I can do that as well. Right? I can say, hey, at some point in the future, man will travel without need for fuel. I'm now a prophet because you can't falsify it. Wow.
At some point in the future, yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to start a religion. That's it. It's going to be called
another religion. My goodness.
Falsifiasology. That's what it's going to be called.
Now called The Forbidden Prophecies by Amarià. That's going to be something which details that case in detail. Now, the interesting thing is you have a nihilist, someone who does not believe in existential, he's an existential nihilist who's
an existential nihilist? I
don't
he's
know,
talking
possibly
about Alex.
Colin?
Oh, maybe.
Cosmic skeptic. He's an existential nihilist, a moral nihilist. He is an epistemological nihilist. He doesn't even believe in morality. And he's making a moral case today.
Yeah, this is argumentum ad volume. I don't think he's a nihilist. I really don't. He's basically said that he's a moral anti-realist, which is fine. I don't have a problem with that. But that's not a moral nihilist. That's not a nihilist. Nihilist says there is no meaning whatsoever. As soon as you ascribe meaning, it's not nihilism. I don't know what he thinks nihilism is. So I feel like he's just going into the atheists, the nihilists, and that's it.
Yeah,
that's.
I mean,
true.
we're not. We're Well, at least some of us are nihilists,
Right.
which is not the same thing.
That's good. Well, some atheists are nihilists, sure, but I think that's most are not. Most are not.
I mean, I don't know how this works. I really don't know. He says, I subjectively value my liberty. In one of his videos, The Moral Argument.
Yeah, I thought it was good. How about this one? How about argumentum ad auditorium? Or auditum? I don't know. Help me out. Help me out.
Vomitorium.
1 hour, 16 minutes. Tell me how, from first principles, liberty works. Is it not based and predicated on a fictitious, hypothetical, mythological state of nature, detailed by John Locke and Thomas Hobbes and those individuals? Where's the scientific evidence for that? Why do you...
Well, I mean, they believed in intrinsic moral principles derived from nature, but that your opponents may not do the same. John Locke believed there were inherent inalienable rights in all humans. There were laws of nature. I don't see any reason why there is, but he believed that. It doesn't make everything that he said wrong, and it certainly doesn't mean you can't use his principles in a meaningful way. It just means he may not be correct on that point. I don't understand.
And
it's like, well, it's like that if you have in the golden age of Islam, people come up with concepts like, zero and some algebra and things like that you say, hey, they're wrong about God, so they're wrong about all this maths. That doesn't follow.
It's also interesting to me that he's ranting about the lack of scientific proof for philosophical principles when he himself is utterly devoid of anything resembling scientific proof.
Yeah, and his idea about falsifiability, and then gives examples of things that are unfalsifiable. He doesn't understand falsifiability in the slightest, because he uttered the words, "You cannot falsify me on these." Falsifiable means that it's possible to falsify you. It's the opposite of what... Wow. Okay.
Believe that. Why do you believe in equality? John Locke establishes equality on the hedonistic principle and on a theory of God. Now you're an atheist trying to find from first principles why you believe in equality. We, as Muslims, don't believe in second-wave feminism.
What do you mean by first principles? First principle. He's loading the question there. First principles, I'm not sure what that even means. Can we cite evolutionary theory as first principles? Like we've evolved to be social animals? I don't know. Like it sounds like he's trying to say, explain why from God we have morality. We don't need God for morality, clearly.
That other thing he said stands out too. As Muslims, we don't believe in second-wave feminism. What? That's like saying, as Muslims, we don't believe in the Brooklyn Bridge. What do you mean? It's a thing that exists, you know?
Yeah. Wow. It would be like me saying, as an atheist, I don't believe in Muslims. What?
Simple as that. Yeah, there's some things in Islam which are different for men than to women. Why do I have to justify myself to you? You have to justify why that equality of the six that you...
Well, because you live in a society where we don't accept those moral standards, where you get to just hit a woman because she's not obeying you. We don't accept that. Intersubjectivity says that is wrong. But you're saying it's right. I mean, he is really digging his own grave here. Well, why shouldn't I be allowed to hit my woman if she is disobedient?
Right? I need a shovel button, because this happens a lot where people just keep digging.
Eurocentric understanding of equality of second-wave feminism in the 60s that emerged is the objective morality. That's you. That's an active claim that you've made. You have to substantiate it. But
no, he never claimed objective morality. What is he talking about? And that's not really... he just pointed out some really objectionable things in the objective morality of Islam. And so if you have a problem with them, then you have a problem in the objective morality of Islam that is said to be objectively true. He's not saying that he's got an objective moral. What is he talking about?
Yeah, like is he responding to Alex's videos because he keeps referencing timestamps in certain videos, or is he responding to what Alex said here? And in either case, where's his own opening statement? He's got the proposition is a positive claim on his side, and all he's doing is trying to knock down Alex's arguments.
Yeah.
Great, but that doesn't mean you win.
Yeah.
Listen to what he says in his video, My Problem with Sam Harris's Morality. Can I finish off?
Yeah, you got me there.
If you go to Somalia and tell those women, why do you put those women in bags? They will accuse you of cultural imperialism. So why are you asking the women if they've been put in bags? What kind of discussion is that? What kind of sanctimonious Orientalist understanding of morality is that? You have to first prove your morality. You're a subjective moralist. You don't believe in objective morality. Don't ask me about morality. You don't believe in it.
Not believing in objective morality is not the same as not believing in morality.
That's like saying, "Oh, well, you don't believe in objective laws, so you don't believe in it." No, I believe that laws are applicable, sure. This is so weird. It's like he's doing, and it's really badly, the whole thing of, well, if you don't have objective morality, you don't have a morality at all.
If you don't believe in objective suits, then you can't have a suit. No suit. Muhammad is not wearing a suit by Muhammad's logic.
Okay. Well, I'm not sure that follows, but okay. I mean, I do believe in objective suits. I think suits are either there or not there. I don't.
Well, that's why you can wear a suit.
Yeah, okay. All right, well, that's fine. That's fine. I'm not sure I particularly want to. Look, I've worn enough ties in my life. I don't really want to again, but that's okay. That's all right.
Prove it. That's an active claim. And with that, guys, I want to say one last thing, which is that he made an egregious claim in one of his videos called The Liberal Hypocrisy of Islam. He said Islam is a racist religion. And I will tell you that Islam is the only religion ancient religion in the world which completely negates racism. Look at chapter 49, verse 13 of the Quran. Look at the Prophet. He said there's no virtue of a black man over a white man, Arab or non-Arab. Now, he's got three options. Option one, to...
Well, I mean, I don't know about racism, but it's a sexist religion. I'll make that stance.
That's definitely true. The racism, it's one of those areas with the mutually contradictory passages. There are passages that say accept the foreigner, accept the convert, accept the people who live among you who don't want to convert. You know, all these but there's other passages, more passages who say behead the foreigner, force the non-believer to convert, you know, things like that. It isn't really clear because it kind of goes both ways on it. But also, I'm over here freaking lolling about this man screaming, prove it, when he spent his entire opening not presenting any evidence for his own position.
Yeah. It's incredible. Like the shift just wants to shift the burden of proof back onto the other side, and that's all. Prove my God doesn't exist when I can't investigate him. Prove it. Prove my Blarney Stone doesn't exist. It's magic and you can't investigate it. Now prove it doesn't exist. Go for it. Knock yourself out. And if you can't prove it, then it exists. What a terrible way to investigate anything. And, you know, it's not surprising he doesn't understand what falsifiability means. Just getting louder and louder as he goes along as well.
Track the statement. Option two. Yes, option two, to provide the evidence, or option three, face public humiliation today. And there's no fourth option. So don't make claims about morality and about Islam if you haven't even read the Islamic literature and you don't know what is in its contents. Sorry for I know it's quite a, performance, but it's a passionate topic for us. I'm thanking everyone here. And I also thank Cosmic Skeptic for coming and for once speaking.
Isn't he going to thank the other speaker? Like, I feel like he's only there for the clout, like he's just clout chasing at this point,
Oh, 1,000%.
Screw this Peter guy. I don't care about him. I don't
Colin
care about
who?
that guy. Colin who? Yeah.
to the Muslim community rather than about them. Thank you very much for listening.
I'm a bit of an amateur at this. These guys are all more or less professional. I wish I was as certain of anything as the people on this side of the table seem to be of absolutely everything.
That's a good statement.
Mm-hmm. It's a classic, but yeah, it's
yeah,
it gets right to the point.
What amazes me as well is their religions command them to be humble, and then they claim to know
Right.
everything about everything, while the atheists are going, "Hey, we don't know where the universe came from. We don't know all this stuff. We want to learn. We want to find out, but in a reliable way. And until we have evidence, we're not going to accept." Where you guys are just going, "We know how everything was anything with, you know." And based upon that, here's how to live your life. It's like, what's humble about that? I don't understand.
It's all on pegs.
Yeah.
I want to start by not singling out Islam particularly, because Islam is just one of those monotheisms that seems to find atheism terribly worrying. I mean, whether the theistic religions believe in one god or many gods, they're terrified of people who don't believe in any gods. And when they have the power to do so, and in the case of Christianity, when they had the power to do so, they routinely try to silence people like me at best by censorship, at worst by imprisonment, exile, or execution.
Yeah, I think he's got a point there. You know, it varies not only with the religion. I think sort of the ancient Greek religions, they, you know, did not have a problem with atheism per se. I think that even within Islam, different areas have problems with atheists and do not. They vary incredibly. But yeah, like Egypt, there was a debate where the atheist speaker was arrested afterwards, presumably because he put up too much of a fight. Like that's when you're sitting there going, yeah, they've got a problem with atheism. Like the refutation inherently that a God does not exist, they seem to have a problem with.
And there's nothing particularly Islamic about this. Christianity was executing people just for being the wrong sort of Christian before Islam was a twinkle in Muhammad's eye. And they continued to do so until 1826, which was when the Spanish Inquisition executed its last victim. Here, I want to quote you a couple of worried Christians talking about atheism in the 17th century. One of them was both French theologians. One of them said, "I am afraid that atheist writings will disclose thoughts to me that would throw me into a fear from which I would not be able to return." And his contemporary, André d'Abillon, said that for such skeptics, there is no punishment violent enough for so dark a crime.
Wow. They make me think about things. Burn them.
How rude.
How dare you cause cognitive dissonance? How dare you? How dirty atheists. How dare you? Wow, that's a good quote.
Even in our own relatively tolerant country, when Parliament was open to people who were not members of the Church of England, guess who came last? First of all, they let Catholics in about 1829. They let the Jews in about 1850. They let atheists in about 1880. So Christianity...
In fairness, I think Muslims were after that, in fairness. So, you know...
no longer has any power to liquidate people who question it, and almost everybody in Britain and most civilized countries is pleased about that. I'll explain what I mean by civilized in a moment. Islam has not lost that power. Not only that, but many people in Islamic countries, and in some Islamic countries, most of the people are very pleased that it has the power to do very nasty things to atheists. The Islamic countries were the only ones who refused to sign the part of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948 that said that deals with freedom of religious belief, including the freedom to change your religion or not to have one. And that's why I think that such countries are, in one very important sense, not totally, not altogether civilized. Last year, I was asked by a professor of English at the university in one of the more liberal Arab countries if I would write an article for his small Arab language departmental journal on Sigmund Freud's use of language. It will be published soon. I'm very proud of it. It'll be my first work to be published in Arabic. But it has one very important omission. Soon after I started writing it, I thought I'd better check with him whether it was okay to mention that Freud was an atheist. He said, if you do that, they will immediately close down the journal and possibly my department as well. Now, you don't really persuade me that you get a better grip on reality when you spend your time trying to stop people from giving their views on various aspects of reality, and when you outlaw discussion about what reality might mean.
Yeah, so, and that ties in with sort of how this video was treated, how they told Alex to turn off comments and they wouldn't let him sort of show the entire thing in its entirety. And there's some dodgy stuff later on that we can point to. We'll probably need a part 2 for this one, Ems. I don't know if you're happy to do that or not. I can always skip a week, but I really would like to do this one. But it sort of goes into the problems in silencing, or I guess hampering, speech about their religion. And it happens a lot. Now, not all Muslims are like that. Some are more than happy to have that conversation, but it does happen a lot. And I think we will see that later during the discussion, where they really try to talk over their opponents. And I've encountered this many, many times with Muslim opponents, that they think that if they just drown you out, they win. And nothing is further from the truth. All they're showing is that they can't argue honestly.
Or have difficulty with self-control. Or, why not both?
Why not both? Yeah.
And whatever we mean by reality, I suggest there are 2 broad types of reality. One is historical reality, which means an attempt to find out what really went on in the past. And the other sort of reality is current reality, things that we can examine, question now. So let's deal with historical ones first. A few years ago, I was on holiday in Morocco, and we hired a driver to take us around, and it was quite a long drive. He'd been to university in Britain. His English was excellent, and naturally enough, the discussion turned to Islam, and he was very keen to tell us his thoughts. And I learned from him that it is completely wrong that Jesus was the Son of God, and that he died on the cross. Now, these are the fundamental tenets of Christianity. They don't get any more fundamental than that. And he said that probably, and there's a certain amount of debate about this among Islamic scholars, that it may be actually Judas, suitably disguised, who died on the cross. Now, not being.
Yeah.
I don't like Colin.
Yeah.
He's drifting into anecdotes. Earlier, he threw out some medium key racism about the whole, civilized countries do that. What the fuck are you talking about, my guy? And also, the one thing that I was able to fact check on the fly, his claim about the Arabian countries wouldn't sign the UN's Universal Declaration of Human Rights, false. One Arabic country wouldn't sign it.
Well, that's not what he said. He said that they wouldn't sign the section on freedom of religion, which I don't think is true either. And I think that, sort of you have to take it country by country. I don't think, you can summarize all of the Arabic countries into one sort of, solid mass.
Yeah, so it's just I'm not loving it. Other countries that wouldn't sign at the time include North Korea, Iran. Now, maybe they because they abstained from signing the entire thing, we don't get to count them as specifically not signing the religion part, but they also didn't sign the religion part, Well,
I know that freedom of religion isn't recognized under that. I think Saudi Arabia, most notably, freedom of religion isn't recognized. And I think that is important. But yes, if you're going to make blanket statements like the only countries that wouldn't sign the religion section was the Arabic countries, and that is untrue, it undermines your position because, he's not a strong speaker. like he said up front, I wish I was as accomplished as other people. He really is coming across like an academic. And I don't know if you've ever had a lecture that does go off into anecdotes and stuff, but it really does remind me of that. He's not on point, and that's important.
Being a theist, I don't particularly care which of them is right. They cannot both be right. Either Jesus died on the cross or he did not die on the cross, and either he was Jesus or he was Judas. But they cannot both be right. They can, however, both be wrong. And that is the problem when you start insisting that things written in ancient documents must be believed without any question. There is actually a lot of questioning to be done about the origins of the Quran. There is very little documentary evidence for about 200 years. Christianity is bad enough because there is nothing about Christianity that dates from earlier than about 40 to 60 years after the crucifixion. And we know how difficult it is to be certain about events that happened 20, 30 years ago. People have ferocious arguments about the Second World War, about all the various other wars that have happened since. So when you're making claims with the kind of certainty we have seen from this side of the table about historical events, when even the history of the Quran is shrouded in quite a lot of mystery, and when you threaten people with serious sanctions if they try and do research on it, that, to me, does not say very much about your design.
Yeah, this is your personal story. This is, they threatened me with sanctions, therefore it applies to all Muslims. I don't, it's very weak kind of evidence or argumentation for it. It's kind of this, well, this is what happened to me. Countered by a Muslim standing up, well, I did a suggestion that it was Muslim and nothing happened. Muslim, Islam wasn't true and nothing happened to me. Like what?
Yeah, like what is he arguing here? Like at one point it sounded like he was arguing against Christianity, and now he's like, what? Do you have a point? Because the premise of the debate is does Islam, is it the better explanation for the world, or what? Like, what are you arguing? This is very unclear.
Yeah. I think he's trying to sort of say that even sort of 50 years ago, we have a very we don't have a great idea of what happened. Like, history doesn't translate into the future well. We can't be that certain about it. Like, for instance, I think I saw Penn and Teller bring this up, that Elvis had a favorite sandwich, right? Elvis. But multiple people have multiple different recipes on what that sandwich was or what that burger was. I think it was a hamburger, maybe.
Peanut butter and banana, I believe.
Well, but
so I've heard.
Whether it was fried or certain like different ways of making it, kind of thing. And that was only like 50 years ago, much less 2,000 years ago. How do we know that the details are the same? So I think he's making a valid point, but I think he's doing it in a very very unappealing, or not very good way, by drawing upon these personal anecdotes and sort of saying, oh, because I was silenced by Islamic people in a way, they're definitely doing that to the rest of history. I think making the point that we can't rely on historical records to the degree that they want to rely on them, I think that's a good point enough than sort of saying, well, they're shutting down everybody, kind of thing.
To get to grips with reality. It was not permitted to do serious historical research on the Bible until about the end of the 18th century. You could still be sent to prison in Britain for denying the Trinity as late as about 1812. But eventually in the 19th century, serious higher criticism, as it was called, of the Bible appeared. And now people are very much less certain that everything said in the Old and New Testaments is actually true in every respect, to put it mildly. The Catholic Church didn't allow that until about 1941, and Islam does not allow it still. Islamic scholars have found their careers seriously threatened if they really tried to get to grips with some of the mysteries of the early versions of the Quran and so forth. So let's turn.
There's an argument to be made in here. There's an argument to be made that the golden age of Islam was undercut by the crackdown on people not ascribing things to Allah. I think there is a point somewhere in here, but he's not making a good job of outlining it. He's not tying it in like this whole thing of, well, we couldn't investigate the Bible or say that the Trinity wasn't. That's really got nothing to do with Islam. It's got nothing to do with Islam. There's also an argument to be made that Islam suppresses other religions by forcing them to pay the jizya and sort of taxing them differently and putting them into subjugation. There's an argument, but he's not really making it in a compelling way.
And now to, how am I doing for time? About halfway? Sorry? Oh, you didn't, that's right, all right. I didn't hear the halfway mark. Let's turn very quickly then to reality as is current. A few years ago, I got into some discussion with Dr. Majid Katme, who describes himself as the spokesman for the Islamic Medical Association of the United Kingdom on medical ethics. And I was interested about Islam's line on abortion. And he wrote to me saying, because obviously one of the issues in abortion is when does the fetus become human? When does the fetus gain the kind of status where its destruction becomes increasingly important? And he said, at 6, quoting him directly, at 6 to 7 weeks of pregnancy, the soul is breathed in the body of the fetus. Divine human life starts when the embryo turns into a fetus. Okay, so that's relatively clear. It's not a human being until it turns into a fetus. At this critical stage, it's absolutely forbidden to interfere with this new sacred life. One can call the fetus here a persona, human and divine. However, there's wide Muslim opinion in the Muslim world, considered by many Muslim scholars in the past. And some of them say that ensoulment occurs 120 days after conception. Personally, I and other Muslims do not agree with this view, based on a wrong Arabic interpretation of one saying of the Prophet. And then he said, this important saying of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, when 42 nights have passed over the nutfa, the fertilized egg, Allah sends an angel to it who shapes it and makes its hearing, vision, skin, flesh and bones. And then he says, "O Lord, is it male or female?" And your Lord decides what he wishes, and the angel records it.
Yeah, that's in the Quran. That's in the Quran. That an angel comes down and decides whether it's not. This is one of the things that I went into with is Islam Scientific, that it says that an angel comes down and decides whether the egg is male or female. We know that that's not the truth. The truth is the sperm either carries an X or a Y chromosome. It's not a case of, you start to get pregnant and then something else decides it. It's decided before the egg is even fertilized. It's decided by the sperm.
Yeah.
And sometimes it doesn't work. And sometimes weird things happen and that doesn't work either. It's not what you think it is. Intersex people are a thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what happens with the angels there? Does the angel just shrug and go whatever? Does God flip a coin and it lands on edge?
Allah wasn't paying attention. It was a day off, just didn't tell the angel. I don't know what happens there. It's just such a dumb thing to say. We know that the sperm has an X or Y chromosome and it meets the egg, which obviously has an X chromosome. And if it's XY, it is male. Testosterone goes, and if it's XX,
some of the time.
Some of the time, yeah. It's not a hard yes, it is. Like it happens some of the time. Some of the time it doesn't. Sometimes it's XX, but it gets flooded. But it all kinds of weird and wacky things happen in biology. It's not this angel decides and sweeps with a sweep of its sword. It's definitely one of these two things. No,
every possible outcome.
Right.
The reference in the hadith. So there it is. Forget all that ludicrous stuff about Y chromosomes and gender. It's Allah what does it. Maybe someone should ask the Muslim Council of Great Britain if they really want someone like that advising them on medical matters. Yes, I will finish there. Thank you.
Okay, so this is the open discussion. I think that that's a good place to call it, to be honest with you. It kind of is, it's just over halfway through, I guess, just over. He was very quick, I guess. Very unconvincing. I don't know why. Maybe he just didn't have the sort of presence, and maybe he sort of rambled a bit. Sort of, he didn't have Alex's, well, here is the arguments that I have. Here they are, very systematic, very organized. He was just sort of, hey, I've been treated badly. Other people have been treated badly by Islam when they try to investigate this stuff. Islam makes a couple of claims that are unscientific. Okay, it wasn't terrible. It also wasn't that great either, I got to admit.
Yeah, a lot of this was kind of disappointing. I mean,
yeah,
you know, Alex did the best, but this was not Alex's best performance. He just, I don't know, maybe it's because of the crappy apologetics he knew he'd be dealing with. It just, the whole reason morality even came up is because Alex brought it into the discussion, and he didn't have to go there. I think he was just trying to make things a little more spicier than just, you know, necessary versus contingent.
Right.
Therefore, Allah, for some reason that nobody's ever going to explain.
Well, it also is a argument that works against the Muslims, but doesn't work against atheism or anybody that's not a moral realist. So if you sort of say, hey, it has these moral pronouncements, and those moral pronouncements, if they are objectionable to you, then you should doubt the objective truth of this religion, because those moral pronouncements of it's fine to beat a woman after she disobeys you or whatever, or you know, it's fine to put a jizya on people, or any of these really objectionable things, or you know, the Muhammad, the prophet, marrying and consummating with a 9-year-old. If that's objection, that is objective moral facts. That's objectively moral to Muslims. Now, Muhammad tried to do a reversal and go, oh, well, you objected. It doesn't work, because if you say there are no objective moral facts, right? There's nothing inherently objective about that. Then that argument doesn't work in reverse. It doesn't, because you're not saying that is, and plus we're not saying that that's moral. We're sort of saying, hey, if it's harmful to humans, we ought not do it, and that's harmful to humans. You're basically saying because Muhammad was a chosen of God, he could do that and it is moral, which is just horrendous and awful and horrible. So I mean, Alex is amazing. He's amazing.
Yeah, he's very well, as Tap was pointing out earlier, he's like not just really smart, but also a very organized thinker.
Yes. Yep. And I mean, probably a lot of that to do is it, you know, naturally he's very intelligent and you know, has a logical mind. I'd say probably he learnt a lot doing philosophy, where you have to think logically. I mean, this is, to put it mildly, his bread and butter. This is thinking about epistemology and on, you know, and secondarily ontology, what is and what isn't, is really what he does, which, you know, he's amazing at. It's really fantastic to see. I think that Alex O'Connor will be one of the great thinkers of our generation. I have no doubt whatsoever, because the stuff that he's putting out there is so compelling. It's yeah, I'm a fan. I think Alex is amazing. I think that, you know, and the fact that it's not just that he's amazing, it's the fact that he's so young and amazing. You know, for if you want to get into great philosophers, you're really talking about people in their 50s, 60s kind of thing, people that have been doing it all their lives. You look at people like Noam Chomsky and stuff like that. I think Alex will be up there with the rest of them if he progresses the way he's doing, because he's challenging a lot of things, and you know, he's so young, so young. Well done. really, really impressed.
Mm-hmm.
Really impressed.
I mean, that's why he got so big, because like right from his first appearances on the internet, people were like, holy shit, this dude's he's got chops. He's been kicking ass, right out of the gate.
Mm-hmm. And he's not like, and I agree with that, but he's not kicking ass as in, going like, we see a lot of these theist debaters and they're just going out and making noise and being obnoxious and being horrible. And he is so cordial, so polite. I think that I would love to be as charming and polite as him in a debate. I think it's amazing. I think it's it makes the audience, if you're just being obnoxious in a debate, the audience, they'll just dismiss you. They're not even going to think about what you're saying. And I think that is a very good choice of his to not, to engage in good faith as much as possible, because it sort of, what are you going to, if somebody is just calling you a jerk or calling you this or calling you that, you really just don't want to listen to them, even if they have good points. And that's just human nature. So I think he's sort of very, very good. Very good.
Mm-hmm. Tastes great, less filling. Mm-hmm. Actually, no, that's a bad slogan. Alex is intellectually speaking very filling, especially when compared against the competition.
Yeah. And I think that I mean, I don't think that I disagree with Abdallah. I disagree with him, but I think he did a very good job at presenting some arguments and backing those arguments up with some, qualifiers and some reasons why we should believe them. I think that Muhammad was terrible. Like he just thought he could exchange volume for meaningful arguments, kind of thing. And he seemed to make these incredibly vapid arguments. Well, if there's a cause, if there's a necessary being to the universe, then that's a god. I've won.
Mm-hmm.
You know that being in philosophy doesn't mean an agent, doesn't mean something with a mind. It's a state of being. Like you haven't, just saying something's necessary doesn't automatically equal God. You have some other properties that you have to show exist, like a mind, will, the infinite power, the personal relationship with people. There's so much more you've got to get to before we can even start calling it a god, much less Allah and Islam. So I just, a total fail from that guy. But, I will say that Abdallah was good. He was good. Do you have anything else to add? Are you happy to do it next week, or would you rather pivot to something else? I can skip a week and do it the next week if you do want to. I'm not that fussed.
Yeah, I had Professor Dave versus Flat Earth Dave set up to go. I actually already bumped it back one so that we could do Jay's debate against Michael Behe.
Who's Flat Earth Dave? I don't know who that is.
I don't know his last name. He's the guy with like the bonnet kind of thing who has an app that he sells on every single appearance. He's like the biggest grifter in Flat Earth, and that's actually why Professor Dave agreed to debate him, because he was like, this is the biggest scumbag. I'm gonna stomp on the biggest scumbag.
Okay.
It didn't end Flat Earth, but it made him feel better.
Yeah. Well, I think biggest grifter in Flat Earth is a bold claim, to be honest with you. I mean, that's a wide field you're choosing from there. So
it's true.
I mean, I don't know. Some of them might be in earnest.
David Weiss, that's it.
David Weiss. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. David Weiss. Okay. No, I'm happy to do that. That's not a problem at all.
Yeah, should be fun.
What have you got coming up, Ems? What's in store on the Better Than Ember channel?
I'm hoping I can record some new original content sometime this week, hopefully, maybe. But we have, I'm not sure when it's coming out, but the next regular recorded video is going to be actually I'm stealing a page from Dapper, and doing the movie version of our review of the Hitchens and Fry versus the Catholic Church. I took both parts and I made them, and it's a nice big 6-hour monstrosity that you can, you know, rebuild your house to, something like that. These super long videos have been doing kind of well, so we'll see how a debate review does. Thursdays, I'm over on the Transpositions for, you know, the weekly news show. Next Saturday, debate review over at my place. And then, tomorrow, I've got a Yahooligan stopping by. We're doing the interview thing again. So Yahooligan tomorrow. And
what time is that? What time is that? Eastern time, I guess.
8 p.m. Eastern.
Okay.
Leading into Bad Science Sunday. So, yep.
Yeah. Okay, that's
so Justin
awesome.
will be by, and then next week, Nicholas Lamar Suter from In Time is going to be over for an interview also.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us, everybody. I've had a blast. I'm glad I got to hang out with all of you, and thanks for hanging out, Ember. This has been awesome. So I'll skip a week and then I'll take up the second half of this debate because I really want to go through the open discussion section, which is something. It's something, but yeah. So thank you so much for joining me, everybody. Don't forget, be kind to yourself, be kind to everybody, and have a fantastic day. Oh, like and subscribe as well. I got to remember to say that more, but do like and subscribe if you can be so kind.
And join the Discord. There is one now.
Oh, there is a Discord. Yeah, I got to start putting the link in the chat. So, yeah, there is definitely a Discord. I'm going to try to be on there more. And sort of, it's just getting started up at the moment. But thank you so much, everybody, and have a fantastic day.
Night.
Bye-bye.